circulated. If you cannot hear me, please raise your hand, but let me speak, all right? Uninterrupted, because we only have limited time and limited opportunity, and the submitters will get a turn, and I will provide to you the same courtesy. So in my submission, the development in terms of the Act, the plans, the national policy statements, those layers that impact on planning is appropriate. I do not intend, Mr. Commissioner, to give a dissertation to someone as experienced as you on the gateway test in part 2, and you might be relieved at that. I rely upon both the section 42A report and on Ms. McLean's evidence that has been filed in terms of the Resource Management Act requirements. I do, however, note that this is a medium density development. I appreciate from a submitter's perspective, you have had something that has been undeveloped or substantially undeveloped in a horse paddock, but the development is medium. The design elements you will hear from experts. It includes building breaks. It includes, there are 22 buildings. The height is limited to 2 floors, and I note that now you could have, as of right, 3 floors. It is less intrusive than what is now permitted. I did start, sir, by asking that I be given the opportunity to speak without interruption. Questions go through the chair, not directly. There's significant landscaping, materials and colours vary and break up the appearance. There's privacy in terms of screening. There is on-site parking, appropriate on-site parking, which, and again, I'm not going to, sir, repeat the evidence that will be given. The evidence will be at the direction of the Commissioner and is absolutely standard, is taken as read, so our experts will only speak to their written evidence. I do, however, note that the site coverage is only 29%, and that the district plan would permit 40%, and now with the medium density residential standards rules that recently came in and nationally, and you are what's known as a tier 1 council, you could have site coverage under that of 50%. You could have a controlled subdivision, which would be 26 allotments. I say, sir, that it would be most unusual for conditions to limit development of those. And so what would be most likely would be that could be 3 buildings per allotment to 3 floors. So you may think that this is intense. I simply say that frankly it is not. There's a significant level of agreement between the applicant and the planner as to conditions. I have had prepared, sir, a schedule of both the section 42A proposed conditions, the conditions proposed by the evidence, and a rationale for the amendment. And I have some spare copies. I could give you that now, sir, if that assists, because I think it's better than in closing. If you would like to have the opportunity to refer to it, I can do it in closing, however, if you prefer, but it's in landscape form with the 3 able to be compared.
Well, I will be asking the planner to run me through the conditions and those which are not agreed.
Yes.
I received, and I think through Ms. Banks, she circulated that to all parties in terms of the council's views on the conditions. And obviously the conditions would apply if consent is granted. And I have not made any determination about whether consent should be granted, but if it was to be granted, the conditions are very important. So we will turn our attention to those at the right time. I'm happy to take them now.
So I've got a copy also for council, and there are some for, I've only bought copies for those that are submitters and wish to speak. Can I approach the council, please?
Yes, you can.
So what the, I might want to send it down, retain one. What the document you have there, sir, is it's in landscape format. You've got the section 42A report, you've got the applicant's proposals, and then you have commentary. So there is no issues in terms of the first about 4 or 5 pages, and then we get to item number 5 on transport, and all that item there does, sir, and you'll see the numbering in the extreme left, is that it's just for clarity only, it combines the conditions also at 6 and 8. At number 7, the only issue is that it doesn't need a condition because the matter is permitted. At number 8, I note that is now included as condition 5. At number 9, it is, and this is dealing with transport and with road marking.
Excuse me, I would really prefer that the people in the back do not speak when other people are speaking. It is most disturbing to me because I can't concentrate on what is being heard when there's murmuring going on. So thank you. If you can just have a little bit of courtesy. This is a challenging venue. So I do appreciate the extent of interest there is in this proposal, but just a little bit of common courtesy, please.
And item 9, Commissioner, that is the transport part of the traffic conditions. It actually strengthens what the council proposed, and it's on the recommendation of Jamie Whitaker. The next one is included, is at 12, and I just note that condition is included in condition 40 to specify what the Residents Association should include, what we say that they should be responsible for. The next,
sorry, what number was that?
So that's at 12, and it's simply been added as to the proposed items that should be the responsibility of the Residents Association. Over the page, at 16, and that there is a point of disagreement on water recycling and water reuse, and Ms. Todd will speak to that in her evidence. At condition 22, there's simply a gap there because it just needs to have an appropriate condition added. Condition number added to it at 23. It's the change at 23 is material only in that Kapiti Coast refer to a former standard which it has now replaced. So if anything, that is a strengthening of that. At 26, at the difference is that part of the condition, when you read it, sir, cannot be relevant, we say with respect, and therefore it's not included. we go to stormwater at 32. And you will hear the evidence that the stormwater is for recycling and rubbish. The bin storage that's referred to in that condition is for the communal recycling and rubbish bins. It also is to avoid any risk of contamination with potable water. It also deals with the water reuse, and it may be that, and we would be happy to have a sign there in terms of water reuse that it is not drinking water. That's not included. The next one, sir, is at 42, and it's you will see that under the section 42A column under B, the third and fourth bullet points, they note the issues of approval of consent drawings, and we say with respect that should be engineering drawings. We're now beyond that. The alternative condition is simply to mirror what Jacobs on behalf of the council's experts propose. At 43, we just say that that is contained, that the condition is not necessary because it is contained in condition F of condition 42. So it's a pure replication. There's another repetition at 46. And then in terms of decision 2 or the land use consent, some plans for that consent are obviously irrelevant and relate to subdivision consent. And we will come to the very last one is the water demand management. Now, the purpose of that document, as I said, Commissioner, is so you have section 42A applicant's response and you could consider the rationale for it. So I propose to call the evidence in the order that was set out in the agenda that was circulated, I think, either at the start of the week or at the end of last week. If you find it acceptable, my proposal would be that Nicola Todd is the last witness rather than the second to last, because she's been the project manager throughout. But
usually you finish with the planner.
okay, I'm happy to stick with that.
Unless there is a particular reason why, apart from being the project manager, why we would depart from that.
No, that's the sole reason, so I'm happy to stick with the order. I just note that there have been statements by Neil Johnson on stormwater and Neil Charters on geotech, not intended to call them, and my understanding is the council is also not calling their equivalent experts, because all of those issues have been satisfied. So unless, sir, you have any questions, I would propose to ask Stephen Sartorius to speak to the project overview.
Okay. For all of those who have provided evidence, what I'd really like you to do is to high points of that. You've got executive summaries, anything which has transpired since you have written that evidence. But right at the start, I think it would be helpful in the project overview. And I notice you don't have any the architects here, the GSE, in terms of the design philosophy. Presuming Ms. White can deal with those, but it would be helpful, and perhaps the rest of the room, just to have all through the layout plan and site plan. And the key components of that Because I did have a question about where the cycling storage is proposed.
Can you speak up, please?
Sure.
Speaking with you and
Okay, I do appreciate that. Thank you. We're doing as best we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, you should have had a light or something, so that.
Well, we're not in the room that we were supposed to be, so we're doing as best we can. So
Door is
please
now
bear,
open for
please
information.
bear with us.
the door's open at the council.
Okay, look, we're here for the day. If we go into tomorrow, hopefully we can go back to the other room.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. It was a very helpful.
Is that acceptable?
That's acceptable, sir. We've got, obviously, Ms. White, we've got urban design, but Mr. Sartorius can speak to basically a walk through the site with the aid of the overview that's on the board and the design philosophy.
Thank you, everybody. Again, I'm Stephen Sartorius, the developer from Thames Pacific, who owns the Gresham Trust. So, us as a developer, we mainly develop in Wellington City, up and on the Kapiti coast. I grew up on the Kapiti coast, Paraparaumu, Waikanae, and Te Horo. And so I know the area, grown up in the area. Since then, I've resided in Wellington City and also overseas for a spell as well. So we are locals developing in, I guess, in a local area here. Our developments are to a high quality standards. However, they are designed to give housing, I guess, housing affordability and housing options for people. So we're not trying to build $2 million, $3 million homes. We're trying to pitch at the market and the area of the market which is not covered, and especially not in the Kapiti coast, for younger home first buyers, possibly single parents that are looking for something in the price bracket of $750,000 to $800,000, a new home which is clean, meets all the healthy home standards, and has some outdoor area to run with it as well. And I think, as you all know, the property prices in the area and all of Wellington have come back a little bit, but are out of reach for a lot of basic homeowners. So I'll kick into the project. Stand this side out of the way more. So obviously 240 Kapiti Road, as you all know, is the horse paddock. We purchased the land about 1 year ago off Graham Halstead, who's still caretaker on the site for us now. Graham originally owned all the land behind it, which was carved off back in the mid-80s. And as he mentioned to me this morning, went through a similar process back then, that people didn't want to see the cows going off the land and anything changing back then. But it's a fantastic site for medium density. There are limited sites on the Kapiti coast that suit this style of development. We have other developments, another one in town called Florian Kapiti, which is off the Hartnell Street. That is less density, it's less units per square metre than we have on this site. There's another development opposite the train station called 4 Kapiti. Again, we've got less density of units per square metre of site on here as well. So coming down, so we just get everyone knows the site, but we've got Kapiti Road running down here and Halsley coming into the back here. Initially in our pre-app meetings with Kapiti Council, we discussed traffic and whether we could come out. Our original design, we had traffic with a left turn coming onto Kapiti Road. Obviously, we've read some of the submissions, and that would have been desired from a lot of you. Initial feedback from council traffic is that was the last thing that they wanted to do, and that it wouldn't be supported if we were doing that. Hence why we did take away our vehicle access onto Kapiti Road. So look, our intention was the same as many of you for that on that side. So we have created, I guess, a single entrance ring road style development, terrace houses on the periphery of the site, which have been broken up into blocks, which are roughly about the same size as many of the houses. So if you can see potentially up here, the block of units here is no different size than the roof line of that property there. very similar to number 14 there. So it's all, I guess, mirrored if you're looking from a helicopter type view and you didn't see the different the number of doorways, it could just be the individual houses from there. We've created a central park area, so it's a private park just for owners and residents within the development. Now that's touched on the 1,500 square metre park, which obviously if we're sitting there going, we want to maximise everything in development, we would have been putting more housing on there. Because of where we are there, it does create a nice breakout area for the owners and tenants in the developments. They have got their own private courtyards, which are roughly about 5 by 4 square metres, so about 20 square metres there, which is an ample space for them to break out to. But again, if they've got younger kids or they want to spend time outside the property, mixed with neighbours, they have got this common area to do so. Most medium density developments do not have any thought to areas like this because the developers are trying to maximise every square inch of that property that they can go to. We've got a mix of 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom townhouses on the site. They are all 2-storey. We did assess the option of going to 3 stories. Major reason we haven't done that, and similar with project in the city called the Paddington, which we didn't either, was just to maximise the light and sun within the development. So if you're living in one of these properties here in the afternoon, sun's coming in, if you have 3 stories there, obviously less light to come through the other side there. So that's a main driver why we're sticking to a 2-story style development on there. We've got some retaining around the eastern boundary and the northeastern boundary. So these properties will sit lower, quite a bit lower than obviously the properties that are sitting proud on that side. And we're slightly higher on this western boundary here, which we're going to be bringing basically the whole site flat and level to go with it. There is a public walkway coming through the site, so it's going to be vested back with KCDC. And that's basically open for anyone to use, riding the bicycles and walking through the site and connecting up with Halsey Grove at the back of the site. Obviously, walking distance to Paraparaumu Beach and the shopping centre, which is not too far away. So again, very good location with the bus stops out front. With the car parking, there's ample car parking. There's over. We've programmed it to have 1 car park per 2-bedroom, plus 2 car parks per 3-bedroom, plus some visitor car parking. Under the new MPSUD rules and the new MDRS rules, they do not require any car parking. If we're developing in Wellington City, our projects don't have any car parking at all because you're close to your amenities, you're close to everything. If we're developing on the coast, we typically put, and if it's medium density, we'll have 1 car park per unit as a minimum to ensure we're not getting too much overspill onto it. So, Nicola, is there anything you want me to add to that?
You just leave you see those buildings back 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah. So, and again from that, so setbacks, we're basically 5 metres setback from these boundaries here. Most of your properties are set back 3. So again, so on that side, I guess we've gone back further than is required on setbacks on those boundaries, just to give more of a break and more of a private area, outdoor space for our owners and tenants in the development. Yeah, correct. And all of the so there is EV charging capabilities within the development as well. We've got bicycle parking, which will be located near the bin refuse areas. Not drawn on this plan, as we've added that in later on. In other developments, if somebody's got, a lot of people with their bicycles these days are a $10,000 e-bike, and they don't quite trust leaving them in a shared car park or in a shared bike park. They have a small kind of bike security lock in their backyard, which is probably no bigger than 1.2 metres high. So that's the typical layout with that. We do find the bicycle parks are used typically more by people that don't ride their bike that often. Again, if you've got a fancy bike, and keeping it more secure than that. Thank you.
I'm interested in the management structure for the common areas. and how that would work in practice. There's it's quite an emphasis in the application that there is common areas and there will need to be shared responsibility. So how will that process work, and have you used it elsewhere, and what are the pitfalls of it?
Yes, so for the management of the development, so it will be a freehold fee simple type of development. We have a resident society in place. So a resident society acts effectively the same as a body corporate. So there will be a building manager, and also there'll be who looks after all the day-to-day running of the development, the maintenance of all the common areas, and any basically policing any noise or anything, any issues that we have with the rules. There'll be a set of rules in place, again, no different to a set of body corp rules, which all owners and tenants must adhere to. There's regular meetings and if there's any changes or any requests there that people need to vote for them. They do pay a annual fee as well, so it goes towards the maintenance. The rubbish collections are private rubbish collection, so it's not KCDC, just to make sure it's all run in a very kind of high standard. Our other projects, the Paddington and Wellington City on Taranaki Street, we've got the same thing in there, resident society. For anyone, again, it just acts very much the same as a body corporate. There's a building manager in place. There's a resident society manager who looks after all the accounting and books on that side. So no different if it was an apartment building or anything like that. So if it was, I know a lot of concerns people go, it's freehold. How does that work? Everyone gets the house and nobody's going to look after all the common areas. People are paying the annual fee. They've got a set of rules which they must adhere to, and they've also got a building manager and a resident society manager in place who police that and will be at the site regularly.
So what's the legal mechanism to make this happen? Is it a covenant on each of the titles?
Yeah, so there's a legal constitution in place, and that's registered on the titles. If you transfer, obviously it stays with the title. If you transfer the title to somebody else, they must be a member of the resident society.
I don't have any further questions, Mr. Stories.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, what happens then if the property is tenanted?
I would really prefer if people didn't ask questions when the applicant is doing their presentation.
All right.
If you wish to get one of the other submitters who have status to be here or a right to be here to ask that question, I'm happy to take it. At the time when the submitters.
A right to be, yeah, excuse me.
No.
Come back, sir. Sorry, I am an observer, and I don't have a right to be there.
No, you have a right to be here. Anybody has a right to be here as an observer is a right to participate in the hearing process.
Well, we come back to this limited notification of the statement, because I've heard the word courtesy bandied about this being part of the legal. How do we know what's going on and observe, and don't even have access to materials? Now, there's a data projector up there. Surely we're in 2022. Could the applicants not become better prepared to provide the right information to all people in the neighbourhood, Kapiti residents?
I don't know what information you're referring to. Well,
I'm referring to the spreadsheets that have just been handed out.
Okay.
To which the gentleman over there was referring to, but we had no idea what.
Okay, it's, we can get more copies done. With
Well,
it,
that's
as I said, this is a bit of a
very
challenge that we're away from the council building where these things can occur. We can get some copies and they can be distributed when there is more copies available.
Would you like me to email a copy to get some more copies printed?
Yeah, that would be, there's probably a way of doing it. Well, I respect your interest in this whole matter, but we need to run this as efficiently as we can. So thank you for that.
Sir, I propose now to have Lorraine White, urban designer, speak to her evidence.
Good morning again, Mr. Commissioner. I'm a senior urban designer. Would you prefer me to come forward, Mr. Commissioner, or?
Well, I can hear you, just.
Well, I'm
So-
obliged to speak to the commissioner in this hearing, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't face three directions. If you go to the front, well, perhaps I'll just stand.
Well, why don't you stand and try and
I'll-
project your
I'll
voice as
stand
much
here.
as you can.
Okay.
There are always shortcomings to that, sorry. It might be boring you to see it, but we're not getting our money's worth.
Look, Mr. Ward, you'll have the opportunity to speak.
I will have an opportunity, but there's a lot of people who haven't.
We-
And if they can't ask
we've
questions,
and we've
they're not
considered,
going to be as well advised at all.
and we've considered the matter of who has the right to be able to speak to the hearing already.
We're going to leave here today a lot of dejected people who have not had their money's worth at this hearing. Because we're here in these conditions which are not, which are adverse to what we probably would have got. And
We've just got to box on as best
no,
we
we
can.
don't have to box on.
Well, I am not prepared to adjourn the hearing. No, and look, I will refute that. It is not predetermined at all. I'm here to hear the evidence, I'm here to hear the submitters, and I'm here to make a determination on the application. It is not predetermined. Thank you, that's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. So again, my name is Lauren White. I'm a principal urban designer at Urban Acumen Limited. I have approximately 25 years' experience working as an urban designer. I'm based in Auckland, but I have projects in Wellington, here in the coast, in Porirua, in Christchurch as well. So I work across the country, predominantly in residential development, medium density housing specifically, both in terms of detailed design as well as large scale plan changes and other processes. My evidence is before you, Mr. Commissioner. I have nothing to add to that evidence. I am also the author of the urban design statement that accompanied the application, as well as the interface assessment and design amendment report, which was authored after the notification and in response to recommendations from council and also in response to submissions.
Okay, can you prepared quite what I found to be quite a useful document, this interface report that you referred to. Can you outline the design rationale for the changes which have been made? I see there's a reduction in 4 units. What the rationale is for the changes that have been made, and why they're required to, in your view, potentially produce a better urban design outcome.
So I supported the application as it was originally lodged, as you know, from the statement that accompanied that application. In general, it exhibits a lot of best practice urban design that is acknowledged by council and very well explained by Mr. Sartorius. But in response to recommendations from council and from submitters, particularly with respect to visual outcomes and conditions along the boundaries, the 3 boundaries. Kapiti Road itself interface is agreed that that is a good urban design outcome, and I think a particular merit of this project. But with respect to the other 3 boundaries, we took the opportunity to prepare the report and provide the information of the particular conditions along each portion of that boundary, because it does change. The conditions do vary. The decision was made to increase the number of breaks in the buildings. 4 units were removed from the development to provide additional breaks in the blocks. It was considered that this reduced the overall length, the maximum length of the buildings, which made them more consistent with the buildings on the outside. And these breaks were also placed in locations that were where the most benefit from that break could be perceived, as in places in between houses or where people come and go from driveways, etc.
You made a comment just then about consistent with the adjoining development, or something like that. Can you
Yeah, in
explain it
terms
further?
of the scale, so the maximum length of any block is now around 25 meters, which Mr. Stevens has already mentioned this morning. So in terms of the visual impact of development, the length of the block contributes to that. There's a number of different aspects in terms of the built form that contribute to the perception of density and scale, in my opinion. So reducing the overall mass of the building, i.e. making them shorter. They haven't been made lower. They are 2-story developments, which is easily anticipated in this environment. So the blocks were made slightly shorter to increase the number of breaks. There were also changes made to the roof lines to vary them slightly so that it's not a continuous roof line. Additions were made of louvers to windows and also opaque treatments to windows. And to reduce the potential for overlooking and loss of privacy, the real and perceived loss. Now, considering the proposal complies with heights in relation to boundary and building height, I'm comfortable with the condition where upper floor bedroom windows face towards boundaries. But I think in response and with the intention of allaying some of those concerns, the applicant has adopted these measures, which are more which help the perception of that change to their environment. And also it's recommended by council, and I support those recommendations.
Interested in stand up, like the relationship with this with the boundary.
Yeah.
It's along here, they're on a lower level.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of earthworks and retaining as well.
Yeah.
Is there any way that sort of relationship, particularly in terms of the open space which is attached to each of those units, could be made any better?
So the retaining along that southern boundary is an asset really to the development, because it does reduce the overall height as perceived from the southern boundary, as well as the potential shading of those properties. Because those properties are north facing, as in their front doors face the north, and in most, if not all, medium density housing living spaces at the rear of the property as opposed to the front door. So the living spaces are on the shady side, and they do look out towards the retaining wall, which does vary in size. It's not particularly large. Varies, I think, from, if I remember correctly from my evidence, about 1 meter to 3 meters. And there's only some of those units actually look towards the retaining wall. Others do not, and the levels are fairly consistent. I think residents can, that's actually identified as the service area for the property in terms of washing line, other incidentals that you might have in your dwelling, and the front garden, the outdoor areas located to the front of the property, i.e. on the sunny side. Because those dwellings are dual aspect, it's an open plan living and dining room downstairs, then that space spills out onto the sunny side, onto the front of the property, and then because there's a retaining wall on the front boundary of that property as well, they lift it above the level of the street, which is a much nicer environment to inhabit. You have some privacy, you have some separation from moving cars and people. And so I think that is an acceptable condition along the southern boundary.
The Bottomless peer review in terms of landscape suggested that it might be a different measure, stepping up towards the retaining wall. And what's your reason for not thinking it was necessary?
The Bottomless report, if I read it correctly, is suggesting that the retaining wall is stepped, as in two retaining walls with the step in between. I mean, that is a possibility. I don't consider it to add any additional amenity to the space. A retaining wall which goes up and goes down and goes up again is still a retaining wall. If the intention of that step is to provide an opportunity for landscaping along that step, then landscaping can equally be provided at ground level or through pots or climbers or creepers or that kind of thing. So I don't see any particular value in step in the retaining wall.
Okay, and I know you're an urban designer, but there was a landscape and visual assessment as well carried out with the application.
Yeah.
And in terms of the Bottomless peer review, there was some suggestions that there were, in terms of whether something has an adverse effect, whether it's a moderate adverse effect or minor and so forth, which can be quite confusing. Some of those were from the peer review's perspective, consider that the effects were more than was put in the application in terms of the assessment of that. Do you have any comment on that? I know you live in design, not a landscape architect or landscape and visual assessment.
Mr. Commissioner, so speaking from an urban design perspective,
Yes.
the conditions and the outcomes along those three boundaries I consider acceptable when compared to what could be delivered on this site as a permitted activity, as well as what can be anticipated to be developed in a residential suburban area such as this. I think these terraces are well designed. I think the architecture is good. I think the landscaping is good. I think the buildings themselves have a lot of visual interest. They are stepped, they have cantilevers, they have different colors, roof lines. I think it's a good development, will be a high amenity environment. So in terms of I think your question in terms of the effect of it, yeah, I mean, it's going to change what the neighbors currently look at, which is a paddock. But I think that we have to think about how should I explain? How is it acceptable in terms of what can be expected on that site? And I think it is. Complies with building height, complies with heights in relation to boundary, open space, and Mr. Stevens rattled off a number of statistics about coverage and that sort of thing already, which gives them the indication that it is not overdeveloped. There is a shared open space in the development, which I think is a particular asset as well. And the terrace blocks and the windows that face towards the boundary are generally consistent with large detached dwellings that could be built in the same location under a different scheme.
Just, can I just have clarification from the applicant? You mentioned that it complies with all building recession plans. I have read somewhere, and I can't exactly recall where, that one of the extreme northern corner of the recession plan breaches on that.
Yes, I think you're right, Mr. Commissioner. I think there's 2 units which infringe very, very slightly on a roof, on an eave.
Yeah, so
So very minor,
it's
very minor.
less than 0.5 of a metre recession plan breach. Is that correct? Any idea of the extent? Yeah. While we're on point, yes, thank you.
Yes, the northern ones are less. I don't have, I can get the number for you.
Yeah.
Come back to you. And the major ones which are over that are typically the ones along Kapiti Road.
All right, thank you. Just going through your evidence, or you. Have you got your evidence with you?
Yeah.
Paragraph 26. Halfway down, you say with respect to the wider surrounding environment, site is relatively contained. Captive road frontage, the only frontage you can see by the wider community. What about the entrance to the site from Woolsey? Wouldn't that be, as you go down the region and look into the site, will you be able to perceive this?
You could look down Wolsey Street and see the development. Yeah, but if you're on Wolsey Street, if you're on Regent Drive, you're going on Regent Drive.
Yeah.
And you would need to be looking sideways to see the development, but of course you can see it. If you're on Halsey, that is, I mean, I don't consider Halsey to be part of the wider environment. Halsey is the immediate environment. I'm talking about people in Paraparaumu generally.
And there will be some other places beyond the immediately adjoining properties where the development can be seen as well, presumably.
If you were on upper floors of dwellings that were close by, for example, not immediately adjoining, but say another block over, you
Well, sorry, I know you. You're
No, she's
very.
just saying she can't hear. This
Okay,
lady here is just saying to me, can I tell her what's going on?
okay, well, you're actually very close to the Ms. White is speaking at the moment, so.
Sorry.
No, that's right, it's just, it's quite difficult for me. Because you must appreciate when there is a little bit of murmuring happening in the background. It is quite difficult to be able to focus on what we're hearing. Thank you. Okay, you mentioned the Seven Oaks Retirement Village, which is in proximity, but not
not
adjoining.
adjacent, no.
Okay, and so why you mentioned the retirement village?
I'm just illustrating the variety of development in the immediate locality. And there's a variety of detached houses, single story, double story, duplexes, some of the people here live in duplexes, there's unit titles,
Yeah,
there's an apartment building just a little way down the road, there's commercial activity, there's retail activity, there's an airport. And the retirement village is really, it's just showing that there is a mix of activities and buildings associated with those activities in the general context.
and that 140 metre long building is single story.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. Call Jamie Whitaker, the traffic engineer for the applicant.
Mr. Commissioner, I just got an executive summary that I can read out here. I was as a child told often to keep quiet, so it's a difficult matter to break. Apologise and try and up the volume. My full name is James Whitaker. I'm a principal transportation planner at Stantec, New Zealand, where I've worked for the past 18 years practicing as a traffic planning engineering specialist. I prepared a statement of evidence for this hearing dated 26th of October. Brief summary of the aspects of my evidence is as follows. Proposed development seeks consent for 135 new townhouse dwellings on the site at 240 Kapiti Road and will be supported by 166 on-site car parks. Vehicle access to the site is proposed via the local road connection of Halsey Road, which is currently formed as a short cul-de-sac. Access and circulation through the development will be achieved via a private right-of-way, which has been designed in accordance with the industry standards in terms of formation width and movement space, and is capable of fully and appropriately accommodating the largest vehicles expected to visit the site. Good quality active mode internal circulation routes are provided for within the development plans, along with connections to the established external walking and cycling network on Kapiti Road, which in turn provide convenient access to the nearby bus stops. The proposal plans include provision for 166 car parks. I acknowledge that some extra demand may occur from time to time beyond the number provided for on site, depending on the resident mix, their vehicle ownership, and visitor patterns. The detailed on-street parking survey undertaken as part of my assessment demonstrates current curbside parking demand in the adjacent streets is low, and in my opinion, there is provision to accommodate forecast site parking overspill without materially impacting on the current parking amenity. Further, the introduction of sections of broken yellow no stopping lines to restrict curbside parking adjacent intersections of driveways, as provided for in the proposed consent conditions, will, in my view, ensure a safe and appropriate outcome. My analysis of traffic generated by the development concludes that the site, once complete, could be expected to generate approximately 90 to 100 vehicles per hour during the AM and PM weekday commuter peaks, or loosely translated 1 to 2 additional vehicles per minute on average on the connecting streets. I acknowledge that with the development in place, some drivers may experience longer delays turning at the Cedar Drive Kapiti Road intersection, much in the same way as occurs at present, where a range of delays are experienced by drivers depending on the time of day and traffic conditions. My analysis of the intersection with the development traffic added shows it can continue to operate with appropriate levels of service and without any significant change in current delays. I have reviewed the safety record for the streets surrounding the site and find that there is no indication that the current roading environment in the vicinity is inherently unsafe or presents difficulties to the existing road users. I note the council's reporting officer taking account of advice from the council's consultant traffic engineering advisor reaches an equivalent satisfactory conclusion around the transportation effects of the proposal subject to the proposed conditions, which I have reviewed and concur with. Overall, I conclude from a traffic and transportation perspective that the development of the site as proposed can be established appropriately and safely, and that any potential adverse effects related to the site can be mitigated through the adoption of consent conditions as proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Obviously, you've had a lot of submitters in the submissions, and there is quite a first-hand knowledge of the traffic conditions which are coming through in those submissions as well. So you've been to the site, you've observed the existing traffic conditions, you're familiar with other sites in the general vicinity. You obviously have various different standards and procedures that you apply to your analysis. But how do you respond to submitters who are saying, well, it's going to make traffic conditions terribly worse? How do you respond from saying, well, if there's 2.5 people on average per residential unit, and there could be 2 cars, that 1 parking space per unit is not going to be sufficient to accommodate them, then there's going to be overspill parking. How do you actually respond in a traffic engineering sense to those points which have been made?
Yeah, I mean, I acknowledge that development of what is essentially an undeveloped site is going to create additional traffic. It is going to generate additional parking demand. My analysis draws from a numerical foundation to determine what the actual additions are likely to be based on the type of activity that's being proposed, and provides an assessment of traffic network population performance, and critically the Cedar Drive Capitol Road intersection, which much of the local traffic and all of the development traffic will connect to the wider road network at. I'm satisfied that with those additional increase in traffic movements, the performance of that intersection is still in keeping with a T intersection on a primary road corridor such as Kapiti Road. One of the key points that was established early on through feedback from council was that they were unsupportive of having site access direct to Kapiti Road on the basis of creating new conflict points onto well, essentially arterial routes introduces a safety risk, and that having additional site traffic connecting via an established intersection was a preferable outcome. Again, in my analysis in reviewing the performance, the current performance of that intersection, and in the future performance of that intersection with these additional traffic demands added, it shows, in my opinion, it can still operate appropriately.
What I don't know if you even discussed it, but what would have been the reaction? And I'll ask the council this as well later on. So left in, left out arrangement without the need for rising vehicles to enter or leave the site. Would that assist?
Well, that was discussed. I think there was still some safety concerns around the cycle lane, southbound cycle lane on Kapiti Road, that vehicles turning either left into or left out of the driveway at the site would have potential conflict with cyclists and the cycle lane. So that was a defining point in terms of the access.
Obviously, Kapiti Road carries
20,000,
which is reasonably significant. Presume is there some form of like limited access control in the front of Kapiti Road here, which basically says if you want to put a new access out on the Kapiti Road, you need specific consent to do that.
I don't think there's a limited access provision on Kapiti Road. I know like parts of Wellington have a limited access streets where any new accesses are subject to more rigorous assessment. But there's not, as far as I understand it, there's no support. It's simply the nature of the function of the road service carrying through traffic.
And from a level of service point of view, you've got your tables in there which talk about level of service A for most movements. You also got an existing level of service E as well, which is the right turn from Cedar Drive into Kapiti Road. I'm trying, right? Sometimes I do drop down a little bit in volume, but I will try. So, but wouldn't the dominant AM peak movement be left turn, and there'd be a much smaller proportion wanting to turn right turn in the AMP
Correct.
out of Cedar Drive.
Correct, yes, yeah, so the higher movement is the left turn out in both AM and PM pits.
So just to understand your evidence on that it's already a level of service A, it's going to be an increase in traffic and it would still be a level of service E, it wouldn't deteriorate to an unacceptable level as a result of this development. You mentioned about on-road treatment, yellow lines and so forth. I think in your paragraph here, 63, where if there is an increase in curbside demand as a result of this development, then you could potentially put in yellow lines in the future. Why would you want to monitor it first of all, or the council be monitoring that? And then it'll be up to the council to do it. My question is, why wouldn't you do it now? Do you think there's going to be a potential problem?
So initially, what I'm recommending is that no stopping lines be placed around the Halsey Grove, Bridget Drive intersection, and that's from the get-go to protect the sight lines for traffic coming up Halsey Grove. I'm then suggesting that in the future, if there are other areas within the local network, and I'm thinking potentially the 90-degree bend on Cedar Drive, that parking, curbside parking was introducing some potential safety concerns, then the council, as part of their regular monitoring, could potentially introduce no stopping lines through the bend to maintain the passage for vehicles travelling through the bend. So it would be there's an initial requirement to protect the sight lines, and then there's a wider sort of monitoring and a reaction if required.
So it's just a matter of putting yellow lines on that 90-degree angle.
On the inside of the bend, I would suggest would be the appropriate. Yep.
Why wouldn't you do it now? It's just paint, isn't it? Okay.
Yep.
Well, groups of council can potentially comment on that. But what you're suggesting is if there is overspill parking, which is more than anticipated at the moment, there is some limited other measures which could be done to the existing road usually to make it work. Cycle parking storage and so forth. You know, the council's going through a process looking at such through a plan change to cycle parking and stuff. There's talk about a communal on-site area for parking. Can you just give me an idea of what such a facility would look like, where it would be on the site, and how, is there any other examples where these communal cycle facilities have been provided successfully?
I might have to draw for assistance on in terms of location of the site.
If somebody else can answer it, then that's fine.
I might take in if that's okay. We've got a couple of options where we could put them, and I'll just stand up a point. I think they'll be similar and in keeping with the refuse areas. And so there could be one located just here at the edge of the park, or potentially over here.
So what are you talking about with communal? You're talking about
bike shed.
A bike shed.
Yeah,
where you can
a
lock
locked bike shed where you can store your bike.
But of what dimension for how many bikes can accommodate that sort of detailed question? Because some of the things are, if you like, getting kicked into detailed design, you're right, through the conditions. But certainly it is something which is very on point in 2022 about walking, cycling provision and making it.
And we'll be happy to specifically detail the location and look.
And would just be one site.
Yes.
I'm probably one or two projects. Just sort of being worked through and how we sort of ultimately the residential, how to accommodate these standalone cycle sheds. The demands of the residents satisfactory will be utilised.
Hearing again, is it?
There's a lot of noise happening in the spectrum, we can't hear a thing.
Okay,
There's doors banging, people talking.
okay. What I suggest is, thank you, Mr. Wood, I have no further questions, that we just take a 10-minute break and hopefully we can sort out what's going on out there. And
to coincide with this.
well, we can have 15 minutes. We are behind time. And if we do, we can either go longer in the day or we can come back tomorrow if we can't get through the proceedings today. So I'll just check in where we're at, perhaps lunch break, which is scheduled for 20 minutes. Presumably everybody's going to go off site to and then come back again. So we might need a bit of flexibility. Mr. Ward.
Just before we break up, I'll introduce you to Ms. Bernadine Bloomgarten. She's one of the submitters.
Thank you. And we'll hear from you this afternoon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm.
All right, well, I suggest we take 15 minutes and I don't know what the facilities are, whether there's a chance for at least a glass of water. Or
Yes.
The witness, which is going to come next. So, Mr. Stevens.
The next witness is Nicola Todd. Thank you, sir.
Hello everyone. I'm Nicola Todd. I'm a licensed cadastral surveyor and director of Trask. I have a Bachelor of Surveying from Otago University, and I've worked in the Wellington region for over 20 years. I've been involved with this project since early 2021 and have worked with both Kapiti Coast District Council and Gresham Trust's team of consultants to bring the project together. I understand my evidence will be taken as read, as will the water tank reduction report I prepared and that was submitted as part of further information requested by the bank. The key points I wish to draw your attention to are as follows. The development is providing water reuse on site by way of 80,000 litres of tank capacity. We're not opting out of the requirement to provide water reuse on site. We're only opting out of the requirement to flush toilets with it and to provide each dwelling with its own outdoor tap. Communal outdoor taps will be provided for the development. The 80,000 litre tank has been sized to provide sufficient water for irrigation of park areas, communal gardens, and for washing buildings when required. The Resident Society will be responsible for monitoring water use and will ensure that the building washing occurs at the time the rainfall is plentiful. If we were to implement water reuse for each individual dwelling in this medium density development, it would require 135 tanks and 135 pumps to circulate the water. This is impractical, and on that basis, we've proposed a communal supply. What we are proposing is not prohibited, it just doesn't meet the permitted rules. Without reciting the permitted rules for new dwellings, I do wish to explain how these rules are implemented in practice, and I've made some bullet points which might be helpful as I work through my submission. Is that helpful? If I said that?
It is helpful.
I've got a few copies, but it will be insufficient, unfortunately.
It's not very long. So,
It's just a really brief summary of how the water use is actually implemented in practice. Residential households adhering to council's permitted standards for water demand management require a dual manifold, which will supply the main supply to the house, and a top up to a water tank, which is usually a 10,000 litre tank. The top up comes from council's potable water supply for times when there's insufficient rainfall to fill the tank. So put simply, if it doesn't rain, there's a hygiene risk to have your toilet connected to a tank that could at times be empty. On that basis, council permits you to draw a trickle or a limited supply from council's potable water. The trickle supply is provided at a rate of 600 litres per day to residential dwelling. This development is not proposing to use any of council's potable water supply to top up the water tanks, therefore potentially saving a significant amount of potential potable water use. The top-up's not necessary as we're not proposing to connect the tanks to the indoor toilets. While the proposal does draw on a small amount of council's potable water supply for indoor toilets, the use is minimal and anticipated to be approximately 45 litres per day. And without the top-up of 600 litres per day, we're arguably providing a net saving of 550 litres per day. I think the conditions proffered adequately address how we propose to provide water reuse on site and are suitable for a medium density development which simply does not fit in the box prescribed by the district plan. So as discussed and been pointed out by Mr. Stevens, I think we're largely in agreement with council on most matters, and we welcome your decision on that and be happy to respond and clarify anything.
thank you. You obviously do a lot of development work in Kapiti, and this requirement, another activity requirement, seems to be the way that a lot of councils are going with water reuse, water recycling, use of grey water, alternative technologies. So potentially you're saying that it's impractical to do for the reasons you've outlined. Does that mean that other similar developments, exactly the same issues arising, or can it be taken into account? If it's like a regular subdivision, lower density subdivision, it can be provided, can work. It's just that the scale of this means that it's impractical. You want to make any comments, or we might have to pass back forward?
I don't think I need to elaborate on that. I think that's, yeah, a standard vacant site. You could easily accommodate all those things. But also you'd have a larger roof area to fill that tank as well. And here we've got small roofs. It would probably take us 4 months to fill a 10,000 litre tank with rainfall alone. You know, and quite simply, we don't have outdoor areas that require watering or outdoor use. Where we do need it, it's communal, and we've got the communal tank to do the watering.
Apart from the issue of toilets. So,
Apart from the issue of toilets.
okay. You say in your evidence of Para 18, you don't consider that standards reflect practical use of water for medium density are out of date. Can you just explain to me why they're out of date? Are they not ground truth, or often have to be buried?
I think the district, when the district plan came in, it was at a time when medium density development wasn't occurring. I mean, those district plan rules are fit for purpose for your large greenfield vacant subdivisions. But you know, the SDPR, those subdivisional guidelines, don't make provisions for it either. They just, I believe they are out of date. I think that when they determined water use at the time, I think it was a study that was done in Kapiti on 12 residential houses. And those were not medium density houses. Those were your standard 3-bedroom home.
And without going through the conditions which have been proffered by the applicant, are you and the council on the same page in terms of this particular issue, or is there still a gap in between them?
There's still a gap in between us in that we've agreed we'll collect all of the roof water, but council still have asked us to connect all of, or the majority of the dwellings to the water closet or the toilet. And that's the part where we're not in agreement on.
Ms. Banks, you'll be able to comment on this in your opportunity towards the end of the hearing. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir, could you wind up your volume switch a little or use the mic, please?
So you want me to basically kiss the microphone? Apologies.
I'm here down the back here.
Okay, well, we're trying our best. Trying times.
The Commissioner, I'd now call Emma McLean, who will kiss the microphone.
And not break up. There we go. If I speak like this, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Kia ora, my name is Emma McLean. I am a senior planner at Trask Consultants with over 5 years experience. I hold a bachelor's of regional and urban planning with honours from the University of the Sunshine Coast. Except for where I refer to other experts' evidence, I confirm that the matters of fact or opinion contained in my statement of evidence, dated the 26th of October, are my own. The consents that are being sought have been well detailed in Ms. Banks' Section 42A report, within my evidence and by the other experts on behalf of both the council and the applicant. However, in summary, the applicant is seeking resource consent for the construction of 135 residential dwellings, associated earthworks, and the associated 302 lot fee simple subdivision. Before I provide a summary of the key points of my evidence, I would just like to clarify the highlighted section in paragraph 117 of my evidence. It was my intention to address this at the conclusion of preparing my evidence and cross-reference the changes in engineering conditions outlined in paragraphs 180 to 182 under the heading proposed consent conditions. The application is a non-compliant activity overall under the district plan. I will take my evidence as read. While there are a large range of environmental effects that require assessment for the proposal, I'd like to instead draw the Commissioner's attention to a few key details relating to what I believe are the key environmental effects and have been raised by the submitters as well. These being intensity effects, residential character effects, traffic effects, and stormwater effects. With regard to intensity effects, these are associated with developments typically associated with a greater level of activity than what is otherwise permitted, such as the presence of people and vehicles. The presence of people is typically experienced in the outdoor living areas. However, through design, these are generally limited in their use. Where blocks are broken up typically along the western and northern boundaries, consideration was given to the use of the adjoining properties. Therefore, typically these breaks are by areas of higher use, such as internal and external living areas. And with regard to vehicle movement, these are largely screened to be within the development by the perimeter buildings. In terms of residential character, there will be a change in visual and amenity values appreciated by the submitters and other adjoining properties. The amenity that will change is largely those related to visual and shading, and what the submitters will see when using their living spaces. The properties where the submitters are located are within an urban environment, and the National Policy Statement for Urban Development guides through Objectives 4 and Policy 6 that there is not an expectation that the environment will remain the same. It is the subject to change over time, and those changes may reasonably include the establishment of this project. With regard to traffic effects and stormwater, these have both been addressed in detail by the evidence of Mr. Whittaker and Mr. Shields on behalf of the council, and with regard to stormwater, both in my evidence and the evidence of Mr. Johnstone. With regard to objectives and policies, I consider that the project generally aligns with those in the NPS UD, the regional policy statement and the district plan. In particular, those objectives and policies refer to and directly support the functional need of residential activities in the residential zone and resilience of the built environment to natural hazards. Whilst the subject site does contain a qualifying matter, and therefore the objectives and policies of the recent intensification planning instrument, or as others may know, Plan Change 2, have limited weighting, I did consider though the proposal against these and considered that they were consistent with the outcomes sought. The project is further supported by Objective 4 and Policies 1 and 6 of the NPSUD, where it relates to well-functioning urban environments and the urban built form and amenity that may change over time. Based on our conclusion of the assessment of effects being no more than minor, I concluded that the project successfully passes the first Section 104D gateway test. As such, it is my professional opinion that given the design of the development, mitigation measures, and the suggested conditions of consent, any potential environmental effects associated with the proposal are acceptable and no more than minor, and therefore the proposed development is appropriate for the site and that consent can be granted. I do note that you wanted to discuss the questions with myself earlier. However, I know Mr. Stevens has already run through those, so I just wanted to know whether you wanted me to address anything further.
Yeah, well, I think I'll leave Ms. Banks and her response to work through those. You've obviously had a look at those conditions. Presumably you were on the pen for the comments on the right hand side, so which is the team's view on that. To me, there is not too much difference between the two, but there are some areas to look at, which we can come to later.
I also just have one further clarification matter that was brought up earlier in relation to the height relation to boundary encroachments. Yes, so there are none except for a couple of eaves along the I keep calling the northern and the western boundaries. Those major encroachments of over a couple of meters are along County Road.
Thank you, because yeah, there was some advice that it complies with parking location requirements for the zone, obviously it doesn't. So that's just to get the facts right on that. But in terms of that, you look at the side as a diamond, one at the top of the diamond, that's one of the recession planes. What is the extent of the recession plane breach at its maximum?
I don't have those measurements on the plans.
Perhaps you could find that out and let us know. Because if it's just a small amount, then it's a lot different than if it is a large amount. Thank you. I'll just work through some questions that I had. The site's bigger than 3,000 square meters, so it triggers regional consents as well. Well, what is the status of those regional consents and potentially why we have local at the same time, potentially determined by one hearing? I have to say it's a bugbear of mine that there's a regional consent and a district consent required for the same proposal. But it is what it is.
Yep, so that is in draft, there is an application drafted, however, it was waiting the outcome of this application before seeking those consents.
Okay, so it's going to deal with discharges, earthworks, and also water sensitive urban design as well, to be the rules that it triggers.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Talk about the relevant framework and there actually be no permitted baseline, but my understanding of the evidence is that you can take some references from bulk and location controls for the site coverage, height in relation to boundary, in terms of getting some sort of benchmark for acceptability of effects. It's possibly more of a statement than a question, but the planning regime as a result of the MPSUD right across the country is changing. And with the implementation, the notification of Plan Change 2, you are basically saying that it is broadly consistent with policy 1 of the MPSUD about well-functioning urban environments. And this is putting words in your mouth, but there was one issue about the actual weighting that you would give. You give it limited weight, but the Enabling Act actually also is mandatory for councils to implement. So have you got any comment on that?
I guess my comment is my interpretation of how the weighting was being applied by Kapiti Coast District Council, as sort of experience a number of councils interpreting it slightly different. So my interpretation was that because we have a qualifying matter, being the ponding hazard, that doesn't carry onto the site, but some consideration could be given to the objectives and policies because the application was lodged before the Enabling Act.
Sure, but in relation to that qualifying, the earthworks and the stormwater disposal are basically going to take that out of play, aren't they?
Correct, but they will still be on the planning map, so it's that difference.
Until they potentially update it with further information down the line.
Correct.
Para 43, bottom sentence. Whilst proposed earthwork will further modify the existing site contours with length and retain visible adverse amenity, visual amenity effects will be mitigated by tying the retaining walls into the proposed fence. My question is, what I've got written in my margin is, what do you mean by that statement about the retaining walls, tying the fencing in, and to mitigate adverse visual effects? What understand?
I believe what I was trying to say, and I clearly did not say very well, was that it would be a combined wall fence structure, therefore screening, any scarring or land modification.
But the actual height of the structure from the bottom to the retaining wall, the fence on top of it is reasonably substantial at the highest point down the bottom of the site, if you like.
Yes, it's gone to that 2.8.
2.8, so about the height of the ceiling. Ceiling would be about 2.8. Perhaps a little less. Okay. Next one, para 45, where again we're talking about privacy and you're going to have a 1.8 metre high fence. If your opinion that the additional 0.8 metres above the node boundary treatment provides suitable mitigation for real and perceived privacy effects and does not directly affect primary outdoor living spaces? How does it not directly affect primary living spaces? Fence.
That's based on where they're located.
Is that a general across the site comment, or is it mainly in those areas where we've got retaining plus fencing?
Yes, that retaining plus fencing, that is an extra 0.8 is primarily along that Cedar Drive, I'll keep up with the western and the northern boundaries. And on my assessment of where those adjoining properties have their outdoor living areas, they are not necessarily directly on the boundary.
I understand. Good. Yeah, then we talk about policy 1, your para 48. You say policy UFD1, P1, in particular, current encourages new urban development within existing urban areas to consolidate urban form. Is that a district plan policy, or are you talking about policy 1 of the NPSUD?
That is a district plan.
Okay. Just was trying to look at policy 1 about of the NPSUD when I was looking at that. So sorry, which doesn't say anything about urban containment or urban consolidation in policy 1, which is pivotal to this hearing, I have to say. Sure. Going back to post change 1 to the regional policy statement. You've had a look through that document. It does put in things like, apart from dealing with a number of freshwater issues which aren't here, it also has some housing bottom lines in that. So you've actually assessed that, and you say it's of little consequence really to what we've got in front of us at the moment, even though it's, you know, it's submissions are now closed on it.
So could you just repeat the question?
So my understanding of your view on plan change 1 to the regional policy statement is that it will be relevant, but really doesn't matter. Is that my understanding of your position?
Not quite sure. This would have been written at a time where it does matter, but doesn't have so much weighting. So not so much consideration or assessment was provided.
Or it's very limited to the housing bottom lines issue, which is all about numbers rather than where they go.
Correct. Yeah, and then I did do the assessment that gets the district plan policy, which links back to the regional policy statement.
Okay, all right, thank you. Para 148. My question is, what do you mean? The bottom last sentence, which reads, for the benefit of those who have got it in front of them, with regard to the blocks of townhouses, these are considered sympathetic to a standalone dwelling form, taking aspects of the existing character of the Paraparaumu sub-area. The question is, what do you mean?
So perhaps sympathetic isn't the right word. What I was trying to say is the blocks are similar to that, to a size of a standalone dwelling.
Some of them. Yeah. Okay, I think that's a matter of fact and degree. Sorry, just your para 180 about proposed consent conditions. Mr. Greenstrom was mentioned in the evidence. Before we review Mr. Greenstrom, please.
Apologies, he worked alongside Mr. Neil Charters on the geotechnical.
Oh, okay, so he hasn't produced any evidence. Thank you. Right, I have no further questions, but I will be interested there's been some conditions which we have been talking about. Obviously, the conditions are on the basis that will be approved, and no determination on whether it's been approved has been made. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner, that is the evidence for the applicant, but there were the two other reports I noted in my opening, where likewise the council has informed their experts. It's on the geotech. Yeah, on the stormwater.
Yeah, but the council had to be a landscape and visual assessment expert.
We have urban.
You have
Design.
design.
Yes.
Council's got both urban design and landscape here. So
Very privileged.
and you would have, well, you would have heard my questions of Ms. Lyon about
Yes.
the in the council peer review of both landscape and visual assessment and urban design. There was some, if you like, misalignment with the application team in terms of the assessment of the effects, whether they're minor, etc. So we will be hearing from the bottom of the team later on. I'm just wondering what expert we can have to respond to, not criticisms, but perhaps misalignment between the views.
I think misalignment is a way to put it, sir, but that is quite easily cured through a condition requiring approval, prior approval. I also note that there was, and you'll see it in the draft conditions, one of the requirements was that they be all native species.
Yeah, that's for landscape, but I think it's in terms of the visual effects itself. Was where the misalignment was, the severity or otherwise.
If there are further questions, I suggest that they be put to Ms. White either now or later, and to the extent that it comes within her wheelhouse, she can answer them.
Okay. Well, we will hear from the council people later on. We'll make a see where we get to with that before deciding to ask Ms. White some questions.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Ward, I think you're up first. The applicant is finished, and looks like we've made up a little bit of time, which is helpful. So hopefully we're on track now. But come forward, and I'll hand this to you. And
I'm going to ask for permission to speak from the front. Can I do that?
if you need to refer to this, then that's fine. Yes. Yeah.
Commissioner, the first thing I'd like to point out to everyone,
Use this.
do I need to use it?
Yeah, use
Yeah,
it.
okay, here we go. Are you hearing me all right?
Yeah.
I want to refer to the poster here for a start. It speaks for itself for me. That does not fit into our area. And that's the first.
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Okay, I've only got about 10 pages here to go through, so.
Yeah, it's just in terms of your 10 pages, you obviously spent quite a bit of time on them. And they're hearing notes and they're all written up. Can we get them sent to council for circulation? But presumably they are all just expanding on the points that you've made in the submission.
Your copy, hard copy and electronic.
Okay, well, we hand the electronic copy to the council for their own records.
If it doesn't work, I can give you my email address and I can forward a email copy anyway. So I've given you there a copy of what I'm going to refer to now, sir, and
Thank you.
it may make it easier for you. My introduction is, my name's Malcolm Ward. I reside at, hopefully not unfortunately, 2 Halsey Grove, Paraparaumu Beach. I initially wish to stress that I am not against nor averse to the concept of medium density intensification projects on the Kapiti coast, so long as they are appropriate, well considered, and aligned with and complement the area in which they're being planned. This proposed development meets none of those conditions, in my opinion. And that's why I referred you to take a look at it, what it's going to look like. People here have referred to their qualifications, so I need to refer to mine. After 73 years, I'm hopeful of graduating from the School of Hard Knocks with honours. And with that, the right to live out my life peacefully, free from the influences of people who do not seem to care about the probable consequences of their actions. And this has got profound consequences for me. I spent 44 years serving as a frontline police officer throughout different parts of New Zealand. And in retirement, I've been continuing my community service as a casual bus driver here on the Kapiti coast, aiding and assisting commuting workers, Supergold card holders, the aged and infirm, school students, the mentally and physically handicapped and or physically handicapped, skateboarders, drunks, druggies, troublemakers, and a few others wishing to avail themselves of the public transport system. I believe I have a pretty good understanding of the area I work in and the people I live with. It's amazed me while reading the reports and assessments, evidence of experts employed by the developer to provide information for this resource consent application and this hearing, who have all concluded that the impact of this proposal is or will be minor or minimal. Rubbish. But never mind, that's their opinion and I appreciate it. I wondered how that could be when there is little anything to compare it with. There is nothing of this magnitude on the Kapiti coast, nor in fact, as far as I can find out, in New Zealand, of this magnitude. It's huge. Then I realised it's probably political speak, enabling the council to short circuit the resource consent process and only call for a limited notification. If I think they actually try not to call for any notification, but never mind. As a layman, I'm afraid I found it mind-boggling trying to read and digest all the paperwork associated with this resource consent process. So I can only ask to be accepted on face value, and neither could I afford to employ counsel or experts of the like associated with the effort. Previous submissions. I don't intend to spend too much time covering matters that will already be before you, sir. And I wish to briefly mention a few, and that is the magnitude of the proposal and the very negative impact it's going to have on the surrounding neighbourhood. The inability of the developer to meet the Kapiti Coast Council, which I'll refer to as KCDC from here, inability of the developer to meet the KCDC's own housing strategy dated May 2022. And I've referred to the online references. The developers further failure to meet many of the recommendations contained in the July 2022 report on urban development and intensification, commissioned by the KCDC and produced by both of us. It's a good document to have a look at if you can get hold of it, because this proposal does not fit in with their findings. The proposed developments relative isolation, sorry, this is the next point, the proposed developments relative isolation from social and community amenities. And I've attached a appendice with a lot of timings and distances which make it very isolated. The proposal's major social, environmental and cultural impact on the surrounding area that has not been mitigated as part of this proposal, either by applicant or council. The potential for this project to create a disaster in our area is very real. My police experience with that. And there's no means of remedying the damage once it has occurred, other than perhaps by the residents taking a class action at a later date against KCDC, who may approve this matter in due course. The proposal makes no attempt to conform with the established area and is as invasive as possible. I now want to refer to the traffic and transport issue, which unfortunately, before the speak box was brought in, I was unable to hear a lot of it. I'm sorry about that, James, but I'm going to make a comment anyway. Mr. Whitaker's statement of evidence appears to relate solely to safety issues and the presentability of the roading system to handle the increased volume of traffic that the proposal will create. It does nothing to address the impact of that traffic on the neighbourhood access routes. Those routes being Regent Drive, Cedar Drive, and Langdale Avenue. Regent Drive is slightly under 1 kilometre in length, and with about 124 properties attributed to it. Cedar Drive is about 1.2 kilometres in length and has about 114 properties attributed to it. Take either of these neighbourhood roads with all the people and vehicles presently therein, and neither will have an impact on the surrounding area like this 1.9 hectare development. There will be about a 100% increase in motor vehicular traffic on the neighbourhood access routes. I refer to the neighbourhood access route, which is actually a term, I believe, that traffic people refer to. I don't believe the impact of this increase on Cedar Drive, Regent Drive communities has been truly assessed. Where at peak times, it can already take several minutes to exit the Cedar Drive Kapiti Road intersection, especially in a right-hand turn. And at that stage, with a fair degree of imminent danger too, I might add. This development will, I hope you're counting the pages, I think I'm a fair full about page 3 here. The development will introduce at least 150 motor vehicles entering and exiting through Horsey Grove. I never know how to pronounce it, whether it's housing or Horsey. Anyone can help me on this, right? Nearly all these vehicles will end up on the major community connector, which is another term that traffic people will refer to. Will end up on the major community connector, Kapiti Road, via either Cedar Drive, Langdale Avenue, or Toronto Drive intersection. Horsey Grove will be transformed from a small cul-de-sac handling a handful of vehicle movements a day to literally hundreds every day. I've got a photograph here which the Commissioner can refer to, that it was 2 trucks parked in the street, and both Pam and I really struggled to get that car out between them. Bloody ridiculous. Never mind. Well, one of my questions is, if, as Mr. Whittaker finally declares, the traffic effects on this development are so minimal or minor, why is entry and exit not being made directly and solely through onto Kapiti Road? Where the property address of 240 Kapiti Road stands. It's not on Horsey Drive, it's on Kapiti Road. My suggestion to that is that 2 exit lanes from the monolith and 1 entry lane would easily handle this minor situation. Mr. Whittaker might be able to illuminate further there, but he used the word, not me, which would enable the adjoining subdivisions to continue to enjoy what they've already established. So everything goes out on the Kapiti Road, not onto Horsey Road. Next thing I want to refer to is similar local projects that have already been mentioned today earlier by witnesses, but I'll repeat. I found 3 similar projects presently being built in the Paraparaumu, did that well, when was it? Paraparaumu area? No, not really, sorry. One of these is at 10 Trius Way, which was referred to as Florian development. I've got a reference here for it. 4 Kapiti Road, which was always also referred to. I thought that was given.
Yes, that's not our development, I just referenced.
Right. Okay, the 4 Kapiti Road and at 5557 McLean Street, Paraparaumu Beach, which I believe is another developer. And the last one is the 4th one at Waitanai at 4 Amahi Street. Looks like we've got some sales brochures here. There we go. Okay, so that was the 4th one I was going to refer to. The point about these is that none of them are anywhere near the size and magnitude of this profound venture. The largest being less than half that size, half the size of this. And thus the present proposal is uncharted territory from the Kapiti Coast. Help me if there is some other property of this size. Next point is that all those mentioned are within the areas identified for urban development intensification in the both fiscal report. It's a very good report in that it sets out quite clearly where there should be housing intensification and where there shouldn't be. This is where it shouldn't be. But never mind. All are within easy walking distance of large retail hubs. And 3 of them are also within easy walking distance of a rapid transportation hub in Waitanai Station and Paraparaumu Station. This being an important cornerstone of medium density housing in the first place. Unlike the present proposal. Well, unlike this proposal, should I say. On the other hand, more appropriate developments can be viewed, and then I took a trip around the drive extension and petrol close areas of the Kapiti estate down at Paraparaumu Beach North, where the continuation of subdivision areas have been completed in harmony with earlier builds. These areas fall outside the urban development intensification area referred to by BOFA, the BOFA Municipal Report, just like this present proposal. This is in between Paraparaumu Coastlands area, which has been referred to, and the beach area, which has been referred to for intensification, not here. How much more fitting would a 26 lot subdivision of 2 to 3 bedroom houses with a controlled activity which the council must consent to, and subdivision creating 26 residential lots could be undertaken on this site, and in fact was referred to by both of us. The only problem being that the applicant developer would not be able to make a massive profit grab. That the local surrounding neighbourhood would be able to live in harmony with the result. I then referred to the KCDC itself, and my experience with them. The council, or more accurately, the public servants working for the council, have been reticent with regards to supplying anything more than required in relation to this application. That's to me. I'm left with the feeling they just want to move the matter on, and my personal thoughts are requests for information and guidance have been met with pleasantry, thank you, but little substance. My mouth's drying out, but never mind, I'll keep going. While many ratepayers in the area would have liked to address this hearing, they have been declined the opportunity by the administrative decision to restrict it to a limited notification of 17 properties found in 240 Kapiti Road. In fact, many of the smaller villas at 2 and 4 Cedar Drive are occupied by aged or rental folk who are not interested in standing up like making a scene of themselves like myself, and or are too reticent to become involved. Thus the reason for a thanks very much. I won't be much longer. Reason for low limited notification was, sorry, I lost my place here. Who are not interested in this proposal and are too reticent to come forward. Thus, a reason for a low limited notification response, and a low number who are prepared to talk to the meeting or able to talk to the meeting. With this proposal touching on so many unknowns, why have administrative officers not called for independent reports on social, environmental and cultural impacts while assessing this application? I realise peer reviews weren't called for, but nothing independently generated by the council administration officers themselves. council officers appear to only be interested in procedural compliance rather than being considerate of the impacts medium density developments have on community character and infrastructure. Large-scale developments of this nature should be required to produce a holistic social impact report conducted by independent analysts appointed by council but paid for by the developer. Kapiti Coast ratepayers need to be confident that their elected councillors and associated public servants are acting in their best interests regarding intensification of urban housing. At the moment, they have little to be confident about. Further welfare and well-being of Kapiti Coast communities should be determined by those communities, not profit-taking developers. It's become apparent during the last week or two that very few elected councillors have any real knowledge of what is proposed at 240 Kapiti Road. As the new council has only just been appointed and the resource consent process has been handled by the administration staff, there doesn't seem to be a lot of clicking back and forth because we've been touched with quite a few councillors who are surprised at what's going on. So I go on to associated comments. An important decision was made in Auckland recently for the development of townhouses being stopped. The character of the surrounding suburbs. I've made a hyperlink there for you soon. I and other residents maintain that the same finding applies to the proposed 240 Kapiti Road development. Aora suspended an Auckland social housing project after neighbours complained. Other references. Housing intensification. There's a Salvation Army report out also, which speaks poorly of housing intensification and which is bringing overcrowding, gangs and transport issues. References. If this project was to be continued with, and it is hoped that I think you referred to it as a residents association. Yep. Yeah. Residents association would be a strong, determined organisation governing the communal running of the property as a whole. Otherwise, as so often happens, it will degenerate quickly into another failed housing situation. Yeah. We've seen them all over the country. Well, I have anyway. Yeah. On to the last few matters, which are the developer has already indicated a total disregard for due process by filling in a pond at 240 Kapiti Road without resource consent to do so. This occurred in late April, early May this year. And by August, we had our seasonal rainfall, and the resulting ponding, as I'll call it to be polite, but it was actually flooding around the batch at the address is referred to in a couple of photographs. According to the previous owners, this ponding had apparently never been experienced before. Whether it's related to the filling in of the pond, I don't know, but there's going to be water issues at this address, and not the ones we'll be talking about today. Will this minor result be further repeated if other earthworks are consented to under this proposal? What contribution will this proposal make to climate change and warming? No. It'll turn the 1.9 hectares of green pasture and trees supporting a couple of grazing horses, which I do admit, first and fluctuate on occasions. Other than that, it'll turn the 1.9 into an entire area of bitumen, concrete, wood, metal, and artificial grass, offering no benefits whatsoever. Granted, there will be a few specimen trees and other plantings scattered around the property, but these are essentially there to break up the visual pollution, not doing a hell of a lot of other good. And of course, it's taking years to establish. I think I've probably said enough there, sir. You'll notice that I included a map of the area where a pond did occur, because apparently council members couldn't find this pond, so it doesn't, for them, it doesn't exist. But we saw the trucks going in and out before. Thank you very much.
Right. So how long have you lived at 2 Woolsey Drive, Grove?
That was in my previous submission, sir, but it was
Yeah.
Really 18 and a half years.
Okay, so, and was that when it was brand new?
No, we were the third owners.
Oh, okay, so about what period was the house built?
2000, it was built, I think, in 2004. We took it over in 2005. We always expected a subdivision to go in there. Not in our wildest nightmares did we ever see anything like this occur.
So the configuration of Woolsey Grove as we now know it was the same as when you purchased the property, with a wide single access stump into
Yes. The only other address on the street was done away with across the other side of the road, where the owners of, I think, 12 Regent Drive purchased that section to put in the swimming pool. So it's very exclusive, that street.
Okay, and to tell us about how you enjoy your open space, where it is on the property, and where that is in relation to the proposal of 240 Kapiti Road.
You're talking about open space?
Yeah, well, like out there where areas where you might want to sit outside and have a cup of tea, or
We've improved our property with a couple of decks with glass gazebos over the top.
so on the western side.
On the northern side, where are we?
You're
In the back here.
Yeah, so the northwestern side.
The other thing we were fortunate enough to do was bring up our 6 grandchildren on that street, which of course we'll never be able to do in the future. We're just very fortunate in that respect.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. It's very clear, and thank you for all the effort that you've put on.
Thank you. I hope it's successful.
Mr. Stevens.
So you raised with me about Miss Moore being present and the applicant's landscape architect not being here. And I don't raise it critically, but there was no brief of evidence from her, so we left Caitlin. We did not bring Caitlin Lambert, but I can endeavour to arrange for her to be available. It might be virtually over the lunch break if that assists.
I think we'll make a call on that later.
Very good.
Because still have to hear from, I've got Ms. Craig and, sorry,
Yeah, I'm Emma McRae, so I'm the landscape architect.
you're the landscape architect.
And Mary Moore, urban design.
Yes.
My apologies.
Yeah, and my apologies as well. Because we have the review report, which is a combined review report, and there is, as I say, some sort of misalignment between terms of landscape and visual assessments anyway. So I think we'll hear from Ms. McRae, and if there are any particular matters arising, I'll put those in writing.
Well, thank you, sir.
I suggest we take the lunch and adjournment. I think we're almost back on program, so well done to everybody. And perhaps, because we're all going to have to shift if we want to get food, I think, unless you've got the sandwiches in the bag.
We got the council may.
It's fine. About how long do people think that it is reasonable? 45 minutes too tight? An hour? Okay, I think we'll adjourn now and come back at 1:45. Cool.
At 2 Regent Drive, which is my elderly mother's property, and presently my daughter and grandson are there. Anyway, I oppose this development for many reasons. My major concern is the environmental impact and also how it will affect us personally and our property. I know Malcolm, our eastern boundary neighbour on Halsey Grove, will have addressed traffic issues which all of us in the neighbourhood are very worried about. The estimate of 90 to 100 vehicles per hour or 1,068 per day is a phenomenal increase in traffic on these roads and past our homes. I think most of us have garages and off-street parking. We, the reverse, drive into our garage off the street and reverse out to get onto Regent Drive. We will have to be very snappy and careful with this increase in traffic. Even when 1 or 2 cars are parked curbside, it can require attentive navigation. These streets are not that wide, especially with bigger vehicles nowadays. Mr. J. Whitaker stated that if there is parking overspill, there is sufficient capacity. He refers to 108 spaces available for parking within a 5-minute walk of the site. Where are these available parks? Why should our street be the overflow for visitor parking, which I do think will be a big nuisance and safety issue? Even though Mr. Whitaker is a traffic expert, I suggest that when one lives and drives in a street, we all become experts over the years as to the reality of driving and parking on these roads. Of greater concern is the appropriateness of this site for such major earthworks and concentration of housing and people. Climate change is here, bringing more flooding and droughts. This is a flood hazard area with a high water table and not far from the sea. I mention the sea because we were overdue a big earthquake. We are overdue in the Wellington region and are asked to be prepared on the Kapiti coast for a possible tsunami and head for the hills. In fact, I just read, I don't know, but Kapiti Island, it will come in and it will go back and forward. It will bounce off Kapiti. So you get wave and wave back. The traffic concern I have here is with only one exit on the Halsey Grove. If we need to head for the hills, we're all going to be stuck with the volume of traffic unless people are going to go by foot or by bike, which I don't think so in an emergency. However, flooding is getting back to the water concerns. Flooding is happening now. Jacob's assessment of stormwater states high groundwater levels will reduce the volume of subsurface storage provided to less than design value and reduce soakage rate. This may consequently result in secondary overland flow out of the site. I see that this increase, this was addressed, and there is going to be an increase in storage in the ground provided for the excess water. But really, will it be sufficient with the deluge of rain likely coming? Our neighbouring houses aren't elevated at floor level as these buildings are to be, to prevent damage from flooding. Will our properties be at increased risk now from the overflow of flood water from the site? Can the geoengineers give 100% guarantee this will not happen to us? Also, is removing a stable landmass of ferns with vegetation and trees, which surely must hold a lot of water in the root systems, during excess downpours, a sensible action? Surely we should be valuing and preserving topography like this, especially coastal, with rising sea levels. Now, I'm not saying this is similar to tearing down the Amazon, but perhaps there are parallels where nature is bulldozed for so-called development or financial gain, but at what cost? There are plenty of examples on the Kapiti coast where we preserve the landscape and build in harmony with it. Water storage is another aspect of this development which is not clear to me. KCDC requires all new house builds to install a 10,000 litre water tank or grey water system. Nicola Todd proposes that the applicant have an alternative solution of communal tanks with a combined volume of 80,000 litres to provide irrigation to Central Park. We heard that. She's justified this proposal in her report, saying that permitted activity standards were set at a time when there were water shortages across the district. Subsequently, water meters were installed, and council have informed us that a reduction in water demand of 25% was achieved through water metering. She continues that at the time, medium density housing was not readily undertaken in the district, and the standards have not been updated to make provision for medium density housing. What I understand from this is that rules need to change to accommodate these intense developments which are not designed for adequate water storage. This is a lot of households for perhaps 300 or so people relying mainly on town supplied water. Long dry spells and droughts are also part of extreme weather events being experienced. All more reason to value water and prioritise storage with tanks for all new builds, I would think. And then look, 80,000 litres for 135 dwellings is a drop in the bucket, excuse the pun. It wasn't clear to me why Nicola Todd mentioned 25% reduction in water since metering, and that all dwellings will have water meters. Is she implying that this reduction and water metering is justification for reduced collection and storage for this new build? Anyway, now I will address the personal and property concerns living so close to major earthworks and construction of this scale. Firstly, the magnitude of the earthworks required to level this land and stabilise it will be very stressful for all of us. Not only the, I've got my glasses, not only the noise, sand and dust generated, but to witness this serene landscape of grass undulating dunes with vegetation, trees and bird life bulldozed will be upsetting, to say the least. Any destruction of nature is a trauma to see, but especially a familiar landscape many of us have overlooked for decades. You know, a peaceful haven we perhaps now only truly appreciate. I would like the psychological impact on neighbours to be acknowledged as a major effect, with possible subsequent mental health issues for some. I also believe it will be difficult removing this volume of sand dune to prevent sand from contaminating houses. If this is the case, I think it only fair that homeowners receive help with carpet and other house cleaning associated once the dust has settled. Perhaps we will need to wear dust masks as well when outdoors. Loss of sunlight and privacy are other issues which will affect well-being and mental health. If these monolithic buildings go ahead, where once we had a clear view over land, will now be rows of over 6-metre dwellings affecting light and privacy. Even with amendments to upstairs windows and other mitigating factors, the mere proximity of the boundary and sheer height will contribute to the feeling of loss of privacy. The loss of sunlight to our particular backyard was also minimised as not affecting the main living area of the house. The 30-year-old mandarin tree, veggie garden and part of the clothesline will be affected. I consider any loss of sunlight anywhere on one's property to be a significant loss, again likely to affect one's mental health. However, what I find most difficult, and I feel I can express the sentiment of some of the neighbours, is that ultimately, no matter our objections or how adversely affected this project will go ahead, a feeling of defeat has hung over us from the moment we've received the proposal and plans, which is possibly one reason only 3 of us speak today. A feeling of hopelessness almost. I would like to think that there is still hope and the Commissioner can see the inappropriateness of this particular site in this neighbourhood for this level of intense housing and the disputes that may arise in the future. I'm not against homes being built on this land. Wouldn't it be a joy to see innovative eco-design builds of many tiny homes which enhance the existing landscape? Edible landscape, solar energy, resilient water storage systems, a truly sustainable green subdivision which contributes to amenity value and could make Kapiti proud. Just a thought, why not? These townhouses are monolithic and uniform in design, a far cry from the individuality of surrounding homes. If the decision is in favour of the applicant, I will be endeavouring to sell 2 Regent Drive because it will be too much of a trauma to be living not only to the earthworks but to the significant change in our lifestyle, well, our life. If I encounter difficulty selling because of this development, I propose that the right thing to do is for the developer to buy our property at fair market price. Yesterday, since writing this, I received from Heather Wright a final draft conditions by email. This volume of material to read with jargon I am unfamiliar with has been challenging. I may therefore have misinterpreted or have not adjusted this this talk to change consent conditions. I also don't understand why submissions were limited to homes on the boundary only when other proximal neighbours will also be affected. Yeah.
Very recent, I presented 3 people.
Yeah. Earlier on in this process, it would have seemed fairer and more respectful for council to have consulted and included us. Yeah, I heard since early 2021, everything's been, going ahead, but we seem to be the last to hear about this. It doesn't feel like council are serving us anymore. I'm very disappointed and do feel we have been of minor consideration with this entire procedure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Same sort of questions I asked of Mr. Ward.
Okay.
Charge your property on that perspective up there.
So Malcolm, do you want me to hear?
You take that.
Malcolm, Halsey Grove here, the entrance way. This is Malcolm.
Yep.
And this is us.
Yes.
Now, our address, my parents bought this property in 1994. This was all horse paddock. This was all farmland. And our address was 12 Cedar Drive before Regent Drive was developed. So now we're 2 Regent Drive.
Yep.
Right there. And this is where reversing out. Look, even now, it's a bit tricky, you know, I mean, there's not too much traffic, but you drive in and you can only reverse out like a lot of other properties. So I just can't imagine the negotiation with all the traffic, 1,068 vehicles per day from here.
And similarly, the green area to the west was your primary outdoor living space. That corner there.
Or this here where the where just this outdoors. So this is where we'll lose like where, you know, mandarin tree, veggie garden, insignificant. Well, not but minor effect, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions. Thank you for all the effort that you put into this. Just in terms of another site visit, I think it'll probably very early next week. We could. Sorry. I will be doing another site visit, and what I propose is that I visit 3 submitters properties who are here today, and there's some ground rules around site visits, which I'll explain to you now, just while we're here, and that I won't be taking any further representations. I'd like to enter your property, view your primary outdoor living spaces and where your habitable rooms are, and also the relationship or the juxtaposition of the proposal. So probably early next week, and perhaps I'll arrange that with Heather. If there are, ideally do them all in one batch. Can be late in the day if people are working or not going to be around. It can be late in the day as well. So I'll leave that to so Heather can get back to you ideally Monday, Tuesday next week.
Usually have 1 o'clock about 4.
1 o'clock. As much as I would enjoy that, it's probably not. All right, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Grout.
I don't need the microphone. I'm a resident of 14 Regent Drive.
You do.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
I do.
Resident of 14 Regent Drive.
The applicants were the people who made the request of limited notification. I feel this request was appointed as limited notification to reduce the information getting out to the general public of our area, making them aware of what is going to take place.
Yes.
I feel when this was appointed to the council as limited notification, they should have overruled it and said, as a hit back, no, this is due for public notification. To make a wider area aware of what is taking place. Limiting it to 17 people, I feel is very prejudiced over our community on what we have as rights to represent ourselves as current homeowners and investment owners of our properties, which I feel are going to be devalued if this was to take place. Ponding areas. It states in all of this legislation that no groundwork is to commence prior to any consents, approvals, or so on. I have got evidence here of the ponding area in the middle of the landfill was dug out and refilled by 2 trucks working approximately 5 to 7 days. Each truck is capable of carrying approximately 8 cubic meters of sand. Continuous flow of these trucks was used to backfill this ponded area, which was underwater and covered in duckweed. Measurements taken from Google Earth measure this ponded area to be 16 meters by 4 meters in size, surface area. Was consent granted? Was consent applied? Are there legal ramifications that can be appointed to these people for breaking these issues? I would like this to be addressed. After this ponded area was backfilled and covered, and the rains that we had in August, the whole area became flooded over and above the backfilled area by 400 millimeters of water depth and overflowing way beyond the natural pond which was in place. I have photos and evidence taken which I will give the Commissioner of these findings. And when this was taking place, I also emailed Sarah Banks of KCDC to inform her that I feel this action was being taken to fly under the radar unnoticed to all concerned. I have not had the only reply I got from Sarah Banks was thanks to your inquiry.
Did you expect more?
Here is the email and all the photographic evidence of what has taken place. Now I'll show you. Retaining walls. If the proposal was to go ahead and a retaining walls formed on neighbouring boundary properties, mine included, along with 12 Regent Drive, a cut on my boundary of up to 2 meters deep is formed. With natural plantings of mature trees of 20 years of age and the root structure, which you cannot control a tree to form, will be damaged. Where do we, as residents, stand for any damages occurred if this was to take place? And there is also no actual plans submitted as to where these retaining walls are in relation to our existing boundary fences. Do we lose our fences? Are they replaced? I do not know. Parking details. 165 car parks are required for 335 dwellings, allowing 30 spare car parks. The parking which has been presented to us is done on a modelling issue. I've got statistics from the 2018 census stats saying that per dwelling in New Zealand, 12.8% of dwellings own 3 cars. 39.4% of dwellings own 2 cars. This, taking this into account in my calculations, and I stand to be corrected, requires 70 spare car parks over and above the allotted amount. So we've got 70 car parks required, we've only got 30, we're going to have an overspill, according to these stats from the census, of 40 vehicles. The 40 vehicles will create a continuous unbroken line of approximately 200 metres in length, overflowing onto our streets. It was noted earlier that why do you not put a broken yellow line in? The only reason I can foresee is why they haven't admitted to putting a broken yellow line in, because that would be acknowledging that yes, there will be an overflow. And with this overflow of vehicles on our street frontage and vehicles parked either side of a road, our guests and our visitors, where do they park? 200 metres down the road to come and visit us. How can you get two vehicles flowing on a two-way system with two lines of cars parked curbside either side of the road? I do not know, and this cannot happen. It is a safety issue. Artistics, impressions of what we see are going to be built, so-called. Only the key viewpoints are shown as an artistic impression. I request viewpoints be formed from the adjacent boundary properties of the 17 limited notifiable owners, showing an artistic impression looking over the back of my fence from what is to what will be if this was to go ahead. You will then see, and this will be proven not to be a minor effect, but a major one. For every 17 of us will invite you onto our property for the artistic person to impersonate these images. Hours of work to be taken on this contract, 7 AM to 7 PM. Estimated time of contract to take place, 2 years. Would you be happy to come home from work and have 2 hours of non-stop clatter over your back fence? I would not. I would like this addressed and reduced if this was to take place and go ahead. My conclusion, I'm not against medium density housing, but there is a place that it can fit in within the Kapiti district. This is not the place. The zoning for this grounded area is zoned as general residential only. It is outside the medium density housing precinct, which is under the Kapiti district plan. So I hear Mr. Commissioner and the council, if this is outside the medium density precinct, how can it get to this stage with a consent when this sort of building under the district plan is not applicable? They're completely out of character. And all I can see is that this is a result of a land grab by corporate greed to make money. As of last night, a property came to market, Kapiti Road, 77 to 109, which is the land bordering between the aquatic centre and the expressway. This is the appropriate place for such a development to take place. Not within 240 Kapiti Road. I would like to call upon the Commissioner and the Council to abandon this application because it is already set down in black and white that it is against medium density housing, it is outside the medium density housing precinct, so it cannot go ahead. is already in place. Thank you. Can I ask present by a speaker to add to what I have covered?
Yeah, well, we did discuss this before. If it is new points, which it hasn't been covered by other people.
I'll be brief and can
I'm
everybody
prepared
hear
to-
me?
Yes.
If that's all right with the commissioner?
Well, there's got to be some ground
I don't know
rules
what's
around this. Okay. Just for everybody's information, this gentleman whose name I don't know approached me during one of the breaks. He is not a submitter, but wanted to be able to speak. And I said the only way that he would be able to speak would be in relation to somebody else's submission who was a submitter. But it really does need to make sure it's not repetitive with what is what Mr. Grout is saying, and doesn't cover any new material, because you really have no status to be involved in this hearing directly. So I'm giving you a little bit of leniency, but it's got to be within some ground rules.
Thank you, Commissioner Dash, and well done on conducting the hearing under difficult circumstances. My name is Trevor Anders, 67 Regent Drive. I am one of those unfortunate people who have a very big interest in this development, but have been excluded by the limited notifications. So I would point out that the integrity of this hearing, sir, has been compromised by the limited advice being too limited. So for instance, traffic, and I know it has been addressed, but I nevertheless have a definite point to make. I noticed with approval that the applicant had actually originally suggested a left turn into Kapiti Road, and probably left in, left out. And that, to our absolute amazement, was battered away by the council. I mean, if you, there are hundreds of residents of Regent Drive and Cedar Drive who have accessed Kapiti Road thousands of times. And I'm sure they will all endorse what I'm saying, that the development is proposing a significant additional load and hazard. For instance, most people leaving the development through Horsey Drive, Horsey Grove, will be turning left, creating a hazard that's on a bend, and then a little bit later, stopping and adding to the congestion that is trying to turn into Kapiti Road. So instead of easing left into Kapiti Road, which is the main use that it would be put to, they will have a double movement, a double set of hazards to create. It defies logic that this was battered away in the way it was done. Let's consider relativity. When a new development is imposed into the middle of a mature existing development, surely some consideration should be given to relativity. I'm sure this would be a beautiful development placed somewhere in Shanghai or Manila, but probably not where it is. Just have a look, use Google Earth, look at the properties around, look at the trees, the vegetation, open space. They've all been mentioned very adequately. And then look at the development. It's incongruous, sir. Now, my final point, and still to do with this, is that reading the documentation to the extent I could with limited time, I've seen that many of the concerns of the residents, of the submitters, have been battered away by the same statement all the time, that the developer
has addressed those issues by decreasing the number of units from, no, not from, just by decreasing the number of units. Well, that sounds good, doesn't it? I will add the from. It's from 139 to 135. So I would suggest that decreasing it from 139 to 35 might be more appropriate.
I wonder, sir, if Mr. Anders could point to his home, please.
Yes, I could. And you know what I'm referring to. My home is up here. My point of access to Kapiti Road is there. I have to go past this in a bend, negotiate the proposed traffic coming out, then arrive through another bend to Kapiti Road. And in a rush hour, instead of sitting there for a couple of minutes, maybe sit there for 5 minutes, enduring the increased hazard as turning into Kapiti Road. Whereas a gentle feed-in, losing only a couple of these units, would create far less of a hazard.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anders. Mr. Grout, you've got a couple of concluding comments, have you? Because I have given you quite good leniency with bringing Mr. Anders on.
I control, sorry. Just a couple of things notes that I did take over and beyond the ones that I had prepared. Mr. Stevens, is it Stevens over here? Okay, with this gentleman here. Steve, yeah. You said that over and above a 2-story or 3-story dwellings could be produced here, and you have actually pulled it quite back. Under my interpretations, this could never be a 3-story precinct due to the CAA regulations of flight paths. So I find your findings incorrect to say that you have somewhat withdrawn and reduced the height claims. You are already restricted. Is that correct?
Okay, was this in your submission? Really, you're here to talk to your submission. And whether it's actually relevant.
Under the plan 2 changes made of the bulk dominance that these structures are going to force upon the residents. The plan 2 changes gives breaks between these buildings. These breaks, in my eyes, are not breaks unless you directly looking down that breakage line. They are totally irrelevant of creating a broken plane. From any angle, that wall forms and conjoins with the main bulk dominance of that one wall and is null and void of creating any visual effects whatsoever.
But those little breaks will let a little bit more sunlight
Not
through.
from 5 degrees.
You don't think?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grout. Now at the stage of heard from the submitters. Yes. Ms. Banks, you'll be sort of corralling everybody and working out order and so forth. I think for the council advisors, you've contributed to the 42A report, so it's about what it's new since the 42A report was produced, and any additional comments from any of the matters that you've heard today.
I'd just also like to add that Mr. James Vulcan is here to answer any questions relating to the stormwater disposal requirements. Should you have any of those? So I'll pass the mic down and we'll perhaps start with Ms. Emma Crane. Thank you. So
so just on Iver McRae, I'm a landscape architect, and I was engaged by Kapiti Coast District Council in June 2022 to peer review the landscape and visual effects assessment prepared by design group Stapleton Alley, DGEC Limited, for what was then the proposed 139 unit development. That assessment concluded that the effects on the quality of the existing landscape associated with the would be low, and that the effects on character would be neutral. They also included that visual effects range from low adverse to moderate adverse. I disagreed with this assessment and found the landscape and visual effects of the proposed development would be greater than those assessed in the landscape and visual effects assessment. I determined that the effect on the landscape character of the site and its immediate environs would be high adverse due to the permanent change in the existing dune landform and removal of vegetation cover. However, this change will be contained to the immediate setting of the site, and the overall effect on the wider landscape character of the area would be low adverse. Due to the density, size and scale of the development, I considered there would be moderate to moderate high adverse effects on residents and dwellings adjacent to the site boundary. My review, together with the review of Ms. Moore for urban design, provided recommendations for how the applicant could seek to reduce the level of landscape and visual effects, as well as improve residential amenity for both residents of the development and for those neighbouring properties. So principally, the recommendations that related to landscape and visual effects were to provide some breaks in the block perimeter, providing a layout that better integrates with the natural topography of the site and staggering the blocks and reducing the number of units. So following the notification of the application, the applicant has supplied some additional information, and they have made some changes to the proposed development to address some of the issues that were raised. In this interim period, I would also note that residential medium density standards have come into effect, and so these changes have been viewed in light of those standards. The applicant supplied an interface design assessment, and that provided a detailed analysis of effects on the surrounding neighbours. They did, as per our recommendation, reduce the number of units to 135 and put some breaks in blocks, and have tried to situate these to align with the views from the neighbouring properties. So that means that there's no direct sightlines between ground floor living spaces on the neighbouring boundaries on the northeastern and northwestern boundaries. However, on the southern boundary, there is still a 2 to 3 metre high level change between the site and the neighbouring boundary, which still creates issues for on-site amenity, which Ms. Moore will address. So sort of in summary, from a landscape perspective, many of the fundamental issues with the site layout and interface with the adjacent residents stem from the nature of the earthworks design for the site, which results in a massive cut and fill exercise across the entire site area. A different approach that acknowledges the existing site topography and considers it carefully to integrate smaller high areas of retaining across the site would perhaps address some of the interface issues. And rather than that kind of extensive earthworks to create a level platform across the entire site, which results in those really high retaining structures along those boundaries. Taking the development, I guess, proposed while it's residential, has quite a different character to that surrounding residential area due to those adjoining building platforms, the density and the height of the proposed dwellings when compared to the surrounding area. However, this character is consistent with what can now be expected in a residentially zoned area, and the landscape and visual effects of the proposal are similar to what could be expected from a permitted development in this location.
Okay, thank you for that. You have a scale of significance of effects. So the proposal, as it now stands, from a landscape vision perspective, from the adjoining properties, you're saying it's moderate adverse?
Yeah, moderate to high, I think, depending on which property.
So, and so in terms of that moderate to high, what do you actually mean? There is a significant externality, there's a significant problem.
I guess
I'm just trying to
Are you talking about in terms of visual effects? I guess it's a change in character from that, an open area to
That's
a
right.
built development.
With
Yeah.
the existing topography to what is being proposed, what is the scale of effects? And you're saying moderate to adverse. Okay, and then, but then you also consider what feasibly could go under on that site as well.
Yeah.
That would produce moderate adverse effects as well.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And this thing, I don't think we need the GST landscape person.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Kia ora tātou. My name is Miriam Moore. I'm an urban designer who's been contracted for council on this project. My expertise in urban design comes from my Masters of Urban Planning and Urban Design, which was completed at the University of Auckland. So same as Emma, we completed a combined peer review and in the landscape, and I did the urban design assessment. Following our feedback, we received a further information from council, including a really helpful document from Ms. White, which further explored the interface between the proposal and the neighbouring properties. I'll probably highlight the point that we didn't agree on, which was the on-site amenity that results from the excessive retaining along what I think we're referring to as the southern boundary. Eastern. Southeast? Southeast. It is quite confusing.
Okay, so you know it's a diamond shape. So I think that's being referred to as the northern, eastern, southern, eastern.
Okay. For the purpose of this, I will refer to this as the eastern boundary. My concern comes with, well, Emma Ms. McRae referred to the sort of varying her opinion that better use of the existing landscape and topography could have resulted in a more sort of natural approach to how this was designed, and the bulk earthworks approach has resulted in retaining of, I think, up to 2.7 metres along that boundary, which paired with a 1.8 metre fence on the top will have some what I consider poor amenity effects for the residents who have this rear yard space. I do agree with Ms. White that the primary outdoor living area is to the front of the units, which has an elevated response, which does give them some privacy. However, the orientation of the dwellings still results in their primary living areas backing onto this, and that will sort of be their main living space, which will have limited sunlight and a sort of boxed outlook. So as in my initial peer review, I did propose that a more stepped approach would be appropriate, that allowed for some a retaining strategy with some planting that would result in the houses having to be pushed further to the west, if I'm getting that right, which would mean a more bespoke typology where there was fewer dwellings and they were sort of longer rather than skinnier. I think that was my initial suggestion, which remains unresolved.
How could it be resolved? Sort of losing a number of units or completely changing the master plan?
I don't think it could be resolved through there. I mean, you could put some planting and some creepers up the boundary, but with that limited sunlight access, I think you'd struggle to find anything to grow in there. Sorry, I'm branching into landscape now, but that would be my opinion.
But aside from that one issue, from the consider it's an appropriate design response.
Yes, it's they've since the update to they've addressed privacy concerns by doing every second unit with louvers. I think that could go further, and some properties have multiple units that overlook their private red space, and introduction of louvers for all those could work. However, the applicant has agreed to use obscuring on the lower half of the windows, which in my experience has made a significant difference to privacy and overlooking both perceived and real.
So is that often used for? It's not been used that frequently.
It has been, so my experience before Wakamasville 2 years, I was in Auckland Council's review team, and that was a frequently used mitigation method, which I have seen in the built outcome when we go and review the sites. Yes.
So it stops the direct out overlooking, but manages to keep the light going.
Yeah, it keeps sunlight in and diverts outlook.
Thank you. There's probably some, thank you to the applicant to do in response to those comments about that. Like southern edge.
Yes, I think for southern line.
Well, you should really call it southeast. Southeast. But for our purposes now, I don't know what we're talking about.
I can come back to that and close.
But yeah, my general opinion was if only if a few more units were dropped, it could just address those outstanding on-site amenity issues. And I did touch on the bicycle parking in my response, just because contextually this is a site that I believe would be really popular for residents to own cyclists and make the most of those connections. So with having slight fewer units, you would be able to provide for that multiple grouped parking, which would just create a bit more space and on-site amenity.
Okay. Yeah, just so I'm absolutely crystal clear that you're concerned in relation to internal amenity for the development as opposed to external.
Correct.
Urban design effects on building property.
Correct.
The traffic expert.
Mr. Ward, you've had your chance and you've been putting your hand up.
That's what I'm just going to ask you about. These people speak. The applicants are allowed to reply. Why aren't they submitted?
Because that is, the applicant is the proponent. So they start, people can comment, including the council officers, and then the applicant has a final word of reply prior to the closing of the hearing.
Do I actually have questions for both those people? I can't answer.
No, you can't, sorry. I think your positions, in all the Smiths and all the people in the back here, your positions are very clear. So, yeah, I do understand what you're saying.
Good afternoon, can you hear me? Good. My name is Colin Shields. I'm a senior principal transport planner with Tonkin and Taylor. And Tonkin and Taylor have been assisting the council on initial review of the work done by the applicant and presenting the information for this hearing and inputting into the commission. So I have a master's in transport engineering. I've been working in the transport and roading industry for 34 years across New Zealand and internationally. So Tonkin and Taylor, we were initially asked to review the integrated transport assessment carried out by the applicant and the assessment of environmental effects, and we produced a report in June 2022. And I won't go into too much detail. I'll summarise our findings in terms of safety, the proposed site access and internal design of the site, the parking and the traffic impacts. We were in agreement with the findings of the integrated transport assessment, and we came up with some recommendations for potentially some further work or incorporation into any future conditions. In October, we were asked to carry out a review of the limited notification responses, plus also the information that was received from the applicant in terms of the what's called the request for information, the RFI, which responded to quite a few of the comments that we had made back in our June report. In terms of the responses to the limited notification transport, there were common themes that I considered were really had been addressed adequately in the ITA, the Integrated Transport Assessment Report, regarding congestion, parking, cycle parking was an issue that was addressed during the RFI process, along with EV charging, which is another issue that was addressed during the RFI process. So I felt comfortable that adequate responses had been provided either in the initial ITA or in the subsequent responses from the applicant during the RFI process. So the recommendations that I then reviewed in our October report that have subsequently fed into the conditions revolve around, subject to detailed design of the internal layouts, the parking, provision of accessible parking spaces, cycle parking that we've heard about, provision of the no stopping at all time, yellow broken lines at the intersection of Wolsey and Cedar Drive, construction traffic management plan, ducting for EV charging, and we also made a recommendation about kind of overall management of the car parking and cycle parking should be a role of the resident society. So that, in summary, is the findings that we agree that an adequate assessment had been carried out of the effects, and we concur that in terms of safety and efficiency of the network, the impact is less than minor.
Thank you for that, Mr. Shields. You mentioned some of these conditions putting things to detailed design. Would it be better if there was a lot more certainty that certainly the physical position of things like car parking spaces and the geometry of the internal voting and widths and so forth are pretty much locked in now?
They're locked in, but it's the next stage of design is the detailed design. There would have to be a safe, what's now called a safe system audit, not a safe system assessment and road safety audit, but that it would be subject to that final design being approved as part of a resource consent.
All part of the conditions or compliance with conditions.
Yes, correct. There were so you had a question about Kapiti Road access.
Yes.
Would you like me to give a response?
Yeah, I was just interested. I do have something of a background in transportation issues from many years ago, and I know from a state highway perspective, there's really you don't want any new accesses onto a state highway, side friction sort of thing, but sometimes there are exceptions made. I just wondered whether it would be ever entertained if this was an exception that could be made.
Okay, so there are no district plan rules about taking alternative access via local lower category roads, and the council normally try and negotiate a position to limit direct access or where possible on roads such as Kapiti Road, which is classified as a major community connector. In my old school thinking, I call that an arterial, but it's in the name. It's a major community connector. It's of strategic importance. It's carrying 20,000 vehicles a day, which you indicated is actually reasonably significant, and that is. It's got a mix of uses. You've got cars, you've got trucks, you've got the bus routes, you've got pedestrians and cyclists, and private access onto that type of road would impact on safety and create delays to the through traffic on that road. So that is why the agreement was reached with the applicant that the access would be taken from the neighbourhood access route, and it's in the name of that classification. That's what Cedar Drive is intended to serve as. And given that the information and the assessments carried out in the ITA demonstrated that the impact of the additional traffic at the Kapiti Road Cedar Drive intersection is very small, then it was considered that that would be a safer and more efficient solution than accessing directly from Kapiti Road. There's also the implications of an access and a potential conflict of the on-road cycle lane. And it must be remembered that there is pedestrian and cycle access directly onto Kapiti Road, so that people can get onto the footpath, the cycle lane, and to access the bus services. So we're only talking about no vehicular access into Kapiti Road.
So you're gonna put traffic lights there for us, are you?
No,
Corner of
well,
Cedar and Kapiti.
no,
No, well,
I'm sorry.
Mr. doesn't live there.
Well, I think I've been reasonably tolerant about people making comments from the back. No, we have got to the stage where it's the council's officers or the council advisors views on what they've heard. Sorry, are you going to make comments?
Okay, well, my name is Sarah Banks. I have a Bachelor of Resource and Environmental Planning from the University of Paraparaumu. I have 22 years experience in planning in New Zealand, and that includes experience at local authorities as well as private consultants. And my current position is as the principal resource and six planner. I guess the next part that you asked me to look at was just the role of the recent regional policy statement change. And we do have some recent evidence that has come out of another hearing, which consider this as a similar matter. And so I've just circulated a copy of the growth strategy page, which has got the future development strategy in it.
I wouldn't mind a copy of what's been circulated, so if there's a spare.
This is.
And so what the result of this hearing has taught us is that we cannot consider the growth strategy as a future development strategy under the NPSUD. And what that means is that they had to decide what weight was appropriate to give such a strategy. So I took a look at this map, and you'll see that the little star burst in green around the airport kind of area, this is identified as a potential development area around the airport. So I took that as a signal in thinking about the context of the site and the appropriateness of the intents to the development. So I felt, obviously throughout my evidence, I had consistently maintained that that is appropriate for the site. But this is another component to that conclusion.
So what's that out of?
So this is out of the growth strategy, which is called Te Tapu Tai. Te Tapu Pai, sorry.
So that this is the case of DC. Future thinking, growth.
I think.
Yeah.
Look at the zoning. look at what houses we need across the district. Yeah. So we're looking at, 30,000 extra houses. in 2030. So I think that probably might give you a bit of help on that point. And I've also addressed, I think we were particularly interested in some more understanding about the role of NPSUD. And that is in sort of mixed throughout my effects assessment through 6.1 to 6.4 of my report. And then again, it's in the objects and policies assessment at page 31 of that. So there's some good context for you there. So did you have any questions in particular that you wanted to ask about?
No, it really is just more of an understanding that we're in a very changing environment with the enablement legislation last year. Council's advertised plan change to implement the Enabling Act. We've got other factors such as the RTS fund change coming in. We've got potential new legislation coming in, potentially into the House at the end of the year. So it's sometimes a little bit difficult to try and keep up with everything and where that direction is, and to look at potential for internal conflict in between such documents or strategies. So, I think in terms of your response on the NPSUD, policy one is really strong. It doesn't matter whether you're a tier one council or not, about well functioning urban environments.
So I guess probably don't have any other particular.
So in terms of what you heard today, your recommendation for me would be to approve the application subject to conditions which have quite been finalised. Is that still your position?
Yeah.
So there was that, please. You saying you are to approve the application?
Ms. Banks's recommendation to me as the decision maker is to approve the application subject to conditions. That's Ms. Banks's view, which is consistent with the 42A report.
Yeah, nothing that I've heard today has changed any of my opinions. And I still think that the effects are assessed across the site as a balance, and around I feel that appropriate consent.
In terms of these conditions, have you, the material which was handed out first thing, have you had the opportunity to go through those?
Yes, we have.
And have presumed you've got some comments?
I feel like some sort of slight alteration to the order of conditions, which I don't think really changes the integrity of them. So on the whole, we would agree with some, the intent of the changes, just the specific wording. Sometimes people felt that, the intent was getting lost. So, that's why we put out the final draft conditions this week to say that was acceptable.
Is it worth you and Ms. McLean having another discussion around, as much as they can be agreed, the conditions being proposed?
Yep.
And if there is a disagreement, reasons why, much along the same sort of format here, but could potentially be narrowed.
Yep.
I don't have anything more. In terms of the stormwater issues, obviously, sorry, I didn't take your name when you were introduced. So, There's obviously it's an existing ponding area, which needs to be managed. There's a storage component underneath. Do you want me to take that? Do you have it? There's some, if you like, storage or tension, but there's some engineered storage provided. In terms of your experience in working with land development and stormwater management in the district, are you satisfied with implementing the conditions of consent that it won't exacerbate the stormwater issues that there might be?
Considering this is week number 11 of this position, that may be a slight challenge. So for your context, I look after what we are referring to as development control and management. So implementation of all these conditions post-approval comes through to me. So those areas where there is to the satisfaction of this comes through me.
Yeah.
And you will notice that there is a standard practice of using the secondary consent conditions as the mechanism to implement those detailed designs as investigation and feasibility is established. So I do not have at the moment a reason to deviate significantly from the standard practice that I have found on coming here. There may well be improved ways to deal with that, but this is the standard practice that has been implemented so far.
So in terms of the parameters of the conditions for which you will eventually have to sign off, you're satisfied that the provision of that information will in a satisfactory manner, and what that means at time, but in a satisfactory manner, would lead you to be able to discharge that function.
That is correct.
Okay, now that stage we can go back to the applicant, and Mr. Stevens, I'm not too sure how you want to deal with this, whether you've got some comments you want to make now, or provide a written response, and I would prefer a written response. And considering this Vance and this claim, will we need to have another talk about the conditions? Whether or not you just want to give us a verbal heads up and follow that up with a written reply. I would prefer something in writing.
Very good. I happy to give you something in writing, but I can give some indications now, but they're simply in the order in which matters have been raised in the course of the hearing. So if you'd like that, I'll go now.
I think that
might go for 5 to 10 minutes. So a lot of concerns about notification, and I'm aware that Mr. Ward raised what I understand was Wallace in the Auckland City Council decision, where he said the development got thrown out in Remuera. In fact, that was a development where they refused to even do limited notification. There was no assessment of its merits, and they simply reapplied and obtained limited notification. And that was notified to Auckland City right at the start. So to the extent it's, well, I say it has no bearing on this hearing. There was from Ms. White, there's a number of items in terms of built form that reduce the perception from neighbours. I can list those in writing, but they include the changes to facade. There's 4 units removed. There's the louvers, the open space windows, roofline changes, landscaping, and the buildings being stepped. And to add to that is the opaque windows, and we've heard that that is now a standard mechanism for mitigation and is effective. Can I use the hybrid of the southeast boundary. So I think, so you probably know which one I'm talking about. There's been concerns raised about that retaining wall, but the impact of that is to lessen the ability to see into the development from the 3 houses that are along that boundary and the church. So there's a significant, about 40% of it is church car park. That's just a lay assessment, but 1/3 to 45%. Those 3 residents were all notified and there are no submissions. So the impact is entirely to the extent that there is one, and I accept there will be some. It is on people who have acquire units within the dwelling. In fact, it is a benefit to those outside it, to the extent that it reduces the visual effects of what is developed. It is, and I note Maureen White comments in her oral evidence to you that the site is not overdeveloped. I accept that the submitters will not agree with that, but in terms of what can proceed and the way that that we're transitioning with the NPSUD and the MDRS standards, there's site coverage of 29%, and that I say, sir, is modest. In terms of parking, there has been an assumption, I think, by the residents that any street side parking that might be found to occasionally arise will be in the residential streets. And you can scoff, but the only street entrance for the development is Kapiti Road, and there is no restriction to parking along Kapiti Road adjoining this development, and there are 3 entrances into the site. That is the most logical place where someone who was visiting that didn't use one of the internal visitor parks would use. And as for the residents, they each have either 1 or 2 parks, depending on whether they are a 2 or 3 unit resident. The bike shed, sir, that's a matter for consent conditions. In terms of water, water is being reused. The 80,000 litres equates to just on, or a fraction under 600 litres per unit. It is all being reused on the site. The only thing that it is not being used for is for lavatories, but the units do not have external taps, so that the reduction, there will not be wasted potable water, but the recycled water will be used for communal use. Mr. Ward raised that the proposal is isolated from amenities, and I simply raised that Emma McLean has listed, in fact, the benefit of those local amenities that it is very near to, and those are at her page 129. Mr. Ward and and Mrs. Bloemgarten, and I hope I pronounced that correctly.
I'm close.
Close. Bloemgarten. Bloemgarten, my apologies. And Mrs. Bloemgarten raised the changes that will occur. That is accepted. I'm not in any way being derisory, but I do note what the NPS UD guidelines say, and that is that it is expected that the environment will change. Some will like it, some won't, but that is the reality. That is now legislated and in place, and you can find that again in Ms. McLeod's paragraph 123. The next issue that came up several times was the ingress and egress, and you've heard that Kapiti Coast District Council sought no access from Kapiti Road. Mr. Shields explained that, and I'm grateful for you using the expression of major arterial too. It's like an old friend. And so that is absolutely standard for councils with that traffic volume to try and limit that egress and ingress. So it is not something that the developer sought. It was something that the council strongly urged, even if the plan did not, could not require it. In terms of Mr. Craig, thank her for her comments. In terms of the topography, she noted that those changes were entirely contained within the site, and also, she said that, and I quote, that since the RMDS has come into effect, character consistent with what the character is consistent with this development with what can now be expected. And that is part of the change that every, well, particularly tier 1 councils throughout New Zealand, of which Kapiti Coast District Council is one. If you look up Wellington, it's one of the ones that's listed, can now expect. I just also note the Residents Association, and you heard that was to be compulsory. It's like a body corporate, except people, no doubt, like many of the submitters, will have fee simple titles, and that's been found to give owners a bigger stake, frankly, in the developments. But there will be a covenant on the titles to their properties where it is compulsory to be a member. It's compulsory to fund the Residents Association, and it will be compulsory to comply with their rules. Lastly, sir, in terms of the proposed draft submissions, I think we can, I support the proposal of narrowing any differences and then providing that to you in writing, and I think that can be done within a reasonably short time period. So those were the matters that I've noted, Commissioner, unless you have any questions.
No, I don't. I think that's probably a fair summary of the issues that have been raised and the applicant's response to those. Just wondering about timing. Thinking that we're on 10th of November, and potentially if there is a decision before Christmas, it's going to depend on some speedy turnaround.
From this side of the room, so 1 week would be should be easily sufficient, and if you want reply in writing, the same can apply.
Okay. So
Tuesday. That's not a week, less than a week.
So okay, so potentially I could receive a right of reply and agree as much as they can be set of conditions by Tuesday. Leave it till next Friday. Anyway, it's because I'd like to go and visit the submitted properties, and either, as I mentioned before, I'll look to do that Monday. Sorry, presuming you heard that, tried to. So I'd like to see them go and visit the submitted properties, which I'll aim to do on Monday. So Heather will be in touch with that. And then once we've received the right of reply, and then formally close the hearing. I'm not anticipating that there is any further information arising that hasn't already been covered, which you're going to be covering in the right reply in more detail.
Sorry, I forgot one item only. The gentleman that spoke that was not a submitter who I think it was, and my apologies if it wasn't him, it was Mr. Anders, but there was the suggestion that the CAA height planes would not permit.
That was Mr. Grout.
Mr. Grout, sorry, Mr. Grout. They have been considered and they would permit development up to 9.4 metres or 3 floors.
I think we'll bring the proceedings to a close today. Thank you all for your efforts. It has been a little unusual this hearing, I have to say. But I thank everybody for their participation and for all the effort that there has been in preparing for today. As I've been outlining to Mr. Stevens, there is a little bit of a step process. I won't formally close the hearing until such time as the right of reply and the conditions are received. And within that time, and on Monday, perhaps we might even be able to sort out the logistics of that now. So intending to be 4 o'clock on Monday or thereabouts within sort of an hour of that. That would suit 3 submitters who appeared today. That would suit me. So we can find that out and Heather will come back to us.
If the those submitters who didn't speak today, will you be able to visit them as well, or?
I hadn't intended to do so. If you feel that there is a viewpoint which hasn't been represented today, I'm open to that. But I have a few, I have been for certainly a familiarisation site visit myself. I'm pretty familiar with the lie of the land. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of aerial photographs. There is a lot of perspectives which have been provided. So I can get quite a good appreciation from that documentation, but I would like to attend the submitters properties who've been here today. Right, thank you all. And yeah, we struggled through, but we got there.